I told you some of the things that I've come across as doing what I do, like Sammy the Bull Gravano, I've interviewed him. He's a vile creep. He got 5 years for that John Gotti case. There was a story. This is a true story. You can look it up. He killed a 16-year-old child. He had thought that this kid was a rival of like a biker group, and he killed him in cold blood. And now he makes a ton of money on YouTube talking about it. This is a guy who's threatened me recently. He basically said on camera that he would make me get on my knees and say, it's just kind of wild that if a rat who was in the Mafia and killed 20 people, he could hypothetically move in next door to you. You would never know. Roy DeMeo is arguably the most depraved person ever connected to the mob. He was a part of the Gemini Lounge crew, and there were 2 people in that group, Joey Testa and Anthony Center. They probably killed 30, 40, 50 people, and they're living in society.
That's crazy.
And nobody knows who they are. I got a quick story for you about drugs. This is insane. This is a guy you should probably have on, actually.
Hey guys, if you're not subscribed, please smash that subscribe button and hit that like button on the video. And if you don't have time to watch this episode right now, no problem, but I'd really appreciate it if you would save it to your watch later playlist. Finally, if you'd like to follow me on Instagram and X, those links are in my description below. Thank you. Hey dude, we're finally here.
Yeah. I got to tell you, man, this studio is sweet.
Thank you, man.
Like,
I appreciate that a lot.
I'm blown away at your operation. I'm a big fan of yours. You've done some great interviews.
Thank you.
I'm honored to be on here.
That's very cool to hear because I've watched you on the periphery of the internet now for maybe not a decade,
I've
but
been
probably about 7-8 years, something like that, where it's always like hashtag Nadu and there's some shit going on with Barstool.
Yeah.
I never know what it means, but I'm just like, it's funny. Like you're following along with it.
That's the thing. When people ask me what I do, I always just say I'm in media. Like, I don't really ever know what to say.
Yeah.
Because it's like I have a podcast, but I also do sports betting and I do crazy videos.
Yeah.
And like, I think that's probably where people know me most. But yeah, I've been on the internet long time.
Yeah, man.
I mean, it's over 15 years now. So,
but you do different things.
So many different
like
things. Right
now, obviously, and we'll talk about some of it today.
Yeah.
But you have the Sit Down, which is a show that focuses on a lot of organized crime stuff that it can include like the cartels and all that.
Yeah.
But like you're a sports betting guy.
Yeah.
You're a reaction video on anything guy, which I do watch all those whenever you react to something.
People like
your
them.
camera angle is just hilarious. I feel like
I
feel like I can feel the air.
If I told you the story behind that camera angle, you wouldn't believe it. And it's,
let's hear it.
And it's taken me to uncharted levels. So back when I was fat, right? So that video, that video was kind of why I did those camera views like that. Because I was fat. I wasn't trying to show, maybe not there, but I wasn't trying to show my chin.
Yeah, you look good now.
Thanks.
You look real
Appreciate
good
that.
now. Back then, there were like 4 chins.
But anytime I would record something, I was like trying my best to like angle it where I didn't get that kind of shit. So when I ultimately went to Barstool, I remember Dave Portnoy said to me, that's how he had found me, through these kind of videos.
Oh, the reactions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And one of the guys that works there, he's like a stable there. This guy, Dan Katz, Big Cat.
Oh, yeah. Big Cat. I know him.
He had went to Dave and said, I got a guy you're not going to believe. He's
looks. Real.
Yeah, he is. And I remember at the time I was giving Big Cat a lot of gambling picks, basketball picks, things like that. We were winning. I had like a decent relationship with him. And he came to me and he said, do you want to meet with Dave? This was back in like 2018, way before gambling even was legalized. And I'm like, yeah, absolutely. And I remember I trudged up to New York, all 345 pounds of me. And I had on I want to say a Nike tracksuit. And back at the time,
It's a Philly tuxedo.
Yeah. At the time, they had an office on 27th and Broadway. It was before they moved to the one they're in now on 7th Avenue. And I remember I walk up, I get off the elevator, and I look to the right, and there's Dave's office. He goes, you the guy? I said, yeah. He goes, you look like a gambler. He said, come in. So I went in, and we talked for a little bit, and he took a liking to me, I think, pretty quickly. That was one thing about Dave that I always say. He was always very straight up with me. I had a lot of skeletons in my closet. I still do. I'm not proud of some of the things I've done on the internet, and some of it had to do with Barstool. I'd said some shit about employees that were working there, and I had to get through some things first. But those videos really, I think, got on Dave Portnoy's radar.
Yeah.
And that was, we were talking about kind of getting hired there. It's like there's no resume you submit.
Yeah, you were telling me this off air. And by the way, everyone, like we're going to talk about some of the research Jeff has been doing today, including on this cult I've never heard of. That's insane. But I really want to go through the Barstool stuff because I'm just curious about it. As someone, I was telling you off camera, like I've been a fan of them like on the periphery forever, right? Like I don't listen to the shows or stuff like that, but the clips, the quick stuff, like it's hilarious. So you feel like you kind of know some of the stuff that's going on, but you know, they're always like live streaming everything in the office, and it seems like it's just like almost everyone's man on the street there. And you're telling me that that's kind of how they hire you.
There's like from when you're contacted for the first time. I remember when Big Cat told Dave about me. I remember I got a DM from Dave Portnoy, but he wasn't verified. Back then, you had, like famous people were verified.
Yeah, it's like a.
So I was thinking to myself, like, is this really him?
Yeah.
And I remember I looked it up and I found out it was him, and it was kind of just like, hey, somebody told me you're funny. Do you want to come up and meet me? I was like, yeah. And like even when you get hired, like there's no like HR person you deal with. Like it's like Dave will hit you up and be like, hey, do you want this? And like 2 days later he'll respond and be like, oh, I can do this. And then I can do that. And sometimes you'll get on the phone with them or whatever.
He hand you a napkin for the contract?
No, there is actually a contract.
Okay.
But
I got that.
But like it's very like rudimentary. He hires everyone personally.
That's cool.
So like no one's there like because of someone. He has to like write off on everything. And when you go in there into like HQ or anything Barstool, there's always multiple cameras around. It's like it's like any like reality show you do. And I think that's one thing that I had success with there. When I was in those offices, which again, most of my time was remote, but when I was in those offices, I was always getting into shit with people, which I think in a way, like that's how, when you're in media, you have to be willing to get into the dirt with people, because if you just sit there and, hi, how are you? Like
no one
it's
remembers
boring
you.
as shit.
Yeah.
You got to have some fun. And that's one thing that Dave taught me. A lot of the time at Barstool taught me. I've always tried to be, not try to be, I always was like controversial. I was going to say shit that some people won't. And
give an example.
Do you really want me to?
Yeah.
Okay. I don't want a woman to talk to me about sports ever.
Ever.
No.
On what basis? I
wouldn't talk to women about nail polish. Like, I mean, let's just be honest. Like,
and you're working at Barstool Sports too, where they have some women talking about sports. You skip those shows?
If that's what they want to do, that's cool. But I don't want to hear, you know, Jamil Hill tell me about getting hit by a quarterback. I mean, what does she know about that? You feel me? Like, but so I would, and it wasn't just I would say like that. It was like I would say about other people. Like, yo, you suck. I don't like listening to you. You're an asshole. I don't want to hear you. And, you know, there are people like conflict. But I always try to be, you know, unapologetically me, you know. And sometimes that got me into trouble. And I think it's just better than being blah and boring. So
yeah. Dave said you're the best basketball sports betting expert he's ever seen. I think he tweeted that out maybe 6 months ago or something. He's like, no, that was it's uncanny.
That was back right when I started, I remember.
Oh, he tweeted back then. He tweeted again though recently.
Okay, yeah, he may have. He said, I think he said something along the lines of like, he might be ugly, but no one knows more about college basketball than him. And like when I go back to like the beginning of my career, like when I was in high school, you know, I've been gambling since I was a child.
Since you were a kid,
like 8 years old.
What the fuck were you gambling on?
Just football games, basketball,
lunch money kind of deal,
things like that.
Yeah.
And I remember like at the Super Bowl, we'd always have a party and we'd have like pools, and I would always ask my dad to be in them, you know, over under shit like that. And then when I was in high school, I remember I go to the barbershop, play parlay cards. If you gambled back then, you knew they were like these little slips. You do like a 3-team parlay, $25 would pay you like $130 usually if you hit all three. And I just fell in love with gambling, really. I never really had that kind of like gene in me where I have to gamble to survive. But I've just always liked looking into numbers. And it's not all gambling. Like well, I don't go to casinos. Like I don't care about playing blackjack or roulette.
Yeah.
For me, it was poker and sports betting.
Yeah, I loved poker growing up.
Yeah, I think a lot of people did.
Yeah.
Like if you grew up in the 2000s, watching
Rounders.
or high stakes poker or something like that. And there was this guy Phil Ivey.
Oh, Phil Ivey was incredible.
Yeah, and he I remember I just watched some of the things that he had did, and I remember he had said in his early life he played poker at the Trop.
Yes.
In Atlantic City.
Yep. He used to. And he Jerome. That was his
Jerome.
ID.
Yeah.
Yep.
And he would lose all his money and sleep under the boardwalk.
Yep.
And I thought of that. I was like, wow. And I remember I played there.
I got a good story for you off camera about that. Yeah,
okay.
Yeah, I can't tell one on camera.
I'll have to ask you about that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I remember I played 2-4-6 limit at the Trop, which is like literally the worst game.
The Trop.
Like I'd buy it for $40. I'm playing with like geriatrics. People can't even see me.
That's a
But you learn how to
place.
play live.
Yeah.
Because live is way different than like playing with your friends or like online.
Yeah. I never played online ever.
It's hard.
Live.
I was on full tilt. I remember. I remember
you were.
that Black Friday day. I remember. When you got on the website and it was seized by the federal government. But yeah, I always enjoyed gambling, and college basketball was my bread and butter. College football, college basketball. I grew up watching it. I was a Penn State fan when I was a kid, and I just liked the numbers. And then as gambling kind of gotten bigger and bigger, there were so many resources to learn about gambling.
But hold on a minute.
Yeah.
How do you know? Because you legit do. Like I've seen some of your tweets and stuff, and I'll like look at it and like look up and be like, Jesus Christ. How do you know about like East Bumblefuck University's like seventh man and how he plays in the second half?
Well, I think to be honest, there's models and like statistics for everything. Like there's like a lot of it's not just me. And I'll give like shout outs to like Ken Palm, which if you're a college basketball person, everyone has a Ken Palm, right? Ken Palm is this stats aggregator that you can essentially search any team in the country, all 364, whether it's Lafayette College or Duke, Citadel or Eastern Washington, and they'll show you all the players, every stat you could want. Stats you probably never even heard of, but they mean something to a game. And
like efficiency type things?
A lot of efficiency type things. But like there are two different types of turnovers. There are live ball turnovers, and then there are turnovers that are forced by your team. So like it would be called non-steal turnover percentage. A non-steal would be stepping on the end line, traveling, things like that. But there's stats for everything. And it's really just about finding schematic matchups that work. A team that on defense plays a lot of zone, if they're playing a team that can't shoot threes and have to get to the rim, they're not going to have success.
Yeah.
Like a lot of the time.
Yeah.
And it's just about following. Like it's a 365-day-a-year business, because nowadays with college sports, on the national title in college basketball a month ago, I believe there were 3,000 kids in the transfer portal.
3,000 in D1.
Now remember,
in D1 basketball.
In D1, yeah. There's 364 teams.
364 teams, there's 12 guys, 15 guys on each team.
I think there's approximately 10,000 kids or so.
And 3,000 of them are in the transfer portal?
It was like around 30%, 25-30%. And that's the thing now, like with people like me, like a team could be totally different one year to the other.
Oh, yeah.
And it's like it wasn't as difficult because a lot of time a coach would be at a school for years, right?
Had a program.
Yeah, now it's not about that. It's about where can I go to make the most money.
Did you hear Jim Laranaga's retirement speech?
Yeah. He's an old school guy.
He's an old school guy, but there's, I mean, it's almost like haunting, like how he explained it, where he said part of the reason he was stepping down midseason, Jim Larinaga was the head coach of Miami at the end of his career. He took him to the Final Four last year, stepped down midseason, I believe, this year. And he said, we got to the Final Four for the first time in however many years, or maybe first time ever at Miami last year. And after we lost, I'm sitting around having the season-ending team meeting, and everyone's like, Coach, we love you. We love it here. And the next day, 8 of my players entered the portal.
There was a kid this year. Michigan went, I want to say Sweet 16, Elite 8. They had a kid the day of the game in the portal.
Is that even legal?
He basically, I think, was like redshirted basically, but like still. Like,
it's crazy.
And I think in a way, like what we've taught kids is loyalty means nothing.
Yeah.
So like, but I also look at a kid and I say to myself, like, what should they be loyal to?
Well, that's the thing. I have a theory on this. I'd love your thoughts because you're in the shit on this stuff a lot more than I am these days. But, you know, the NCAA was this good old boys club, the Mark Emmerts of the world and whatever. Right. Gimme, gimme, gimme. We'll collect all the money. Yeah, f you, and Reggie you Bush. You're making us $1 billion, but you get nothing. Don't you dare buy that Acura.
And then
you know?
When you do it, we'll take all your things away.
You never won the Heisman Trophy.
Right.
It didn't even happen.
No.
So I think they fought it for so long, and it was so ridiculous because my best friends in college, I went to D1AA, and they had a 60-hour-a-week job. They were all football players, right? So, like, I saw how much this took out of you, even not at the level of, like, Division I. So I was always for, like, these kids should be able to go make money. Even if it's not from the university, they should be able to go make sponsorship deals and stuff like that, 100%. But, like, I feel like after it built up for so long, the guys like Emmert were like, all right, you want this? F you, we'll give it to you. And they set up a system that was designed to crash in on itself and make a mockery.
Well, and now there's no happy medium either.
No.
So it was either you get nothing or there's no regulation on the rules already.
Yep.
So, like, you have a kid on one team making $2 million and you have a kid making very little.
Yep.
So and what we're seeing is it's destroying the game.
Yeah, look at all the coaches retiring.
But you also look at, and I want to go back to what you said about Larrañaga, and like, I think in a way, this is one of, I think, the major issues we have in America currently is we don't have any male leaders anymore. So for instance, like when I was growing up, there were so many community people, like men that weren't your father, but like your YMCA coach or the Boys and Girls Club, or like there were places for young men to go to, right? And like high school basketball, public league meant something.
Yeah.
Right? Whether it's Philadelphia or New York City. Nowadays, the public school system is shot out. So no one goes to them, right? And in turn, most of the kids that can't afford or maybe just aren't good enough to go to a magnet school or a charter school or don't have any money, they're swallowed up by a system. They turn to crime generally because they have nothing else. They have no leader. The mother's working 60 hours a week. Yep. And I look at people like, you know, like a John Thompson, right? Who's at Georgetown.
Legend.
My favorite coach of all time is John Chaney at Temple University.
Another legend.
A guy who threatened to choke John Calipari at one point.
I'm going to choke you.
Yeah, I'll kill you. I'll kill you. and the reason I loved him is because
he was amazing.
He was a Prop 48 coach. And I don't know if you even know what that is.
Prop 48? I don't know what that is.
Prop 48 was basically, it was the kids who weren't smart enough, basically. And they were essentially not allowed to play. And people just gave up on them, essentially. They were from bad areas, bad neighborhoods. And Chaney essentially went into them and said, I'm going to work with you. I'm going to get you to a good GPA. I'm going to work with you. I'm going to make you into a man. You're going to play for me. And if you do good, you could play for my program. And then I'm going to hopefully get you into college. And hopefully you'll go on and go to the NBA or at least have a job in life. And you look at someone like Aaron McKee, a guy who played in the NBA for years. He was a Prop 48 kid. Simon Gratz High School. John Thompson did it. If John Thompson didn't exist, Allen Iverson would not have
100%. It's a crazy story.
Allen Iverson was in prison.
Yes.
And Ann Iverson, Allen's mother, called John and said, give him a chance.
Yep.
And John was the only one that gave him a chance. Do you know about the drug dealer with John Thompson? You ever heard about this?
The drug dealer? No.
Okay, let me tell you about this.
I know the Iverson story well, but not this.
One of the biggest drug traffickers ever. He recently died within the last 6 months. This guy, Rayful Edmond.
Oh, I know that name. Yeah.
Probably.
Can we pull him up, Alessi? Rayful Edmond?
Yeah, probably on the short list outside of New York City, one of the biggest drug traffickers American-born of all time. This guy was making 20, 30, 40 million a month.
A month?
Yeah. Selling
Frank
crack.
Lucas. Way beyond that. Yeah.
This Rayful Edmond was.
Oh, not this one?
Yeah.
Oh, he just died.
Yeah, he died late. Well, it's funny because he actually became a rat in prison, and he was released late 23, I think, and he died like 6 months after.
Wow.
So at the time in the 80s, he essentially adopted and gave out crack and brought it to Washington. That's how the crack epidemic started there. Like he owned Southeast, Southwest DC, and was making a ton of money. And he was, I mean, he'd go into like an Italian clothing store and drop 400, 500,000. And he loved basketball. Rayful played basketball, big basketball guy, and he loved Georgetown. And in the 80s, they were the premier basketball team in the country.
Yeah.
Lonzo Mourning, guys that. John Turner.
Dikembe.
Yep. And Rayful would sit courtside. And John Thompson had found out that Rayful was taking his kids to the club. John Turner, Lonzo Mourning.
No.
Yeah, and John didn't say much. He just said, "Go get him and bring him to me." And they said, "It's Rayful Edmond. He ain't got to come see you." He goes, "Tell him I want to see him." And Rayful said, "Absolutely." And he walks in. "I'm going to see John Thompson. I'm going to sit down with John Thompson." They shut the door, and they said for like the next hour, John Thompson just railed into him. "Stay the away from my players. If I ever see you by my players again, da-da-da-da-da." And Rayful never came to another game after that. They said that's how much respect John Thompson had, that he basically told the biggest drug dealer in the country to get lost. Don't come back. Because he cared about his kids.
He did. John Thompson, and you brought it up, but if you go through the Allen Iverson story and what he did there, and of course people say right away, well, of course, if they're a generational talent, you'll make an exception.
But Allen was a great, Allen was a historically good Virginia football and basketball player.
He was a better football player than basketball player, which is
But he had gotten years in prison for a bowling, which that whole story is a mess as well.
Yeah.
But still, what I'm saying is we don't have those type of coaches anymore. Most coaches now, all they care about is winning games, going to Final Fours, which is fine. You obviously have to do that to get paid and whatever. But caring about a kid who comes from a broken area or maybe doesn't have a father, those coaches cared more, I think, than the ones do now. And they're all gone. The Larinagas who have been around 50 years.
Yeah. The Nick Sabans, these guys are leaving.
Yeah. And listen, it's probable that those coaches that are coming in now are better coaches. They're smarter coaches probably. Do they care as much about kids becoming men and being good people in society? I don't know.
What's up, guys? For the next 20 minutes of this conversation, Jeff and I got deep on the 2000s NBA era and some other things related to that. That was kind of totally off topic for the video. So I decided to make that a Patreon episode, and I'm going to pick up our conversation right now at the part where we start talking about the cartels. So here we go.
Even people that go to Mexico for vacation, I think are insane.
Depends where you go.
I would never step foot in Mexico.
Not
ever.
Anywhere.
No, never.
I haven't, so I can't speak to it. But
there are nearly 200 countries on the planet. Go to another one. There are about 30 countries that I would never go to. I don't care. Why
aren't you going? And obviously the answer is going to be cartels, but specifically, why aren't you going to somewhere in Mexico that's
Cancun
a resort area? Sure,
because drug cartels literally run those places. And again, maybe Tulum, there's certain areas of Tulum that are really nice. But you're still going to have military walking on the beach. You're still going to have all that sort of thing. And I guess I'll say to most people, you'll probably be fine. And there's probably 10, 20% chance something will happen. But you need an ATM. You go off the beaten path and you're going to get stuck up and they're going to steal all your money in your account.
Yeah, you ever seen the video of the gay couple that got pulled over on the side of the road? That was right outside a resort.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
People don't realize that outside of these city centers, for instance, 2 years ago, there were 4 individuals from South Carolina that went to Mexico for a surgery. They're from South Carolina. I don't know if you remember that story.
No.
4 of them, they drive from South Carolina to Texas. They go through the border at Matamoros. They go into Matamoros. And they're going to this plastic surgeon to get much cheaper plastic surgery. They're in a van. They're mistaken for Haitian gangsters.
Oh, no.
And the Gulf Cartel.
Oh, I do remember
which,
this. Yeah.
There's a group called the Scorpion Group that run Matamoros. They're barricades. And you see a group of 4 people that are not Mexican driving through it, barreling through. You're going to think they're the ops. So they're apprehended and kidnapped. 2 of them were killed. 2 were released back to the country. But, that's
Didn't they send the bodies back as an apology or something?
They sent back the 5 people. No, they tied them up and gave them up to the United States.
Oh, my God.
But, that's the kind of shit we're dealing with. A simple I'm going to go to Tijuana and get some medication can be like really bad.
Yeah, it's definitely, I mean, we've obviously had some people in here from Ed Calderon to Kat Schultz to John Norris, talking more from the U.S. side, to Jorge Ventura, Luis Navia, who works with all these guys, and they all talk about it. Like, they run the whole country. Like, there's no denying that. You would think that, like, there's places where they're not dumb enough to do shit, but to your point, I've heard stories, I don't know if it's Cancun, I can't remember, but some of these resort places, you know, people will be like pulling into the town and there's like bodies hanging, you know, from the side. So I see what you're saying.
I mean, like, I have people that I know that like live in San Diego and they'll be like, oh yeah, I drive to Rosarito every couple of weeks. And it's like, you drive into Mexico. Like, that's one thing I would like, no fuck, like maybe flying to Tulum. Okay, I get it. But driving into Mexico is insane. Like, that's an insane idea. Because at the end of the day, like, if I'm a criminal group and I see you, him, and me driving into Mexico, I would extort you too.
Yeah.
Like, who wouldn't do that?
I'd see your haircut and I'd be like, no, this is a real
Well, maybe
guy.
not
Stay
me,
away.
but like you and him are fucked.
Yeah.
Like, your whole wallet's gone. Because I'm jacking you up and I'll probably steal your car and like, that's it. Like, that goes on in this country. You know,
Yeah.
like, you go to the wrong neighborhood, they're gonna strip you down.
Yeah.
Like, so you like, and in a world where there are absolutely no laws, it's anarchy. There is no laws. Those cartels run, and as Calderon will tell you, there are hundreds of cartel groups.
Yeah,
it's not just like the Sinaloa. That's when people are like, it's the cartel is going to get me. It's like, well, which one?
Yeah,
because there's hundreds.
Have you followed like the whole aftermath of this El Mayo thing?
Sure.
All right, what's going on there?
So I had some TikToks on this that went crazy viral. But one thing people, and I'm sure these guys have told you, and like, I remember when, like, I'm a big proponent of, I think the biggest problem this country faces as a whole is not the economy, not anything. It's the drug war is a complete failure at every level.
Yep.
And it's completely affected policing.
Yep.
It's affected every segment of our community. And, well, now it's affecting white people, so we care about it all of a sudden. But for years, it wasn't. So nobody cared about it. That's just the truth.
Yeah.
It's affecting white suburbia, so we care now. But
it's sad that that's true, but that is
But
true.
it was funny when El Chapo was apprehended by the United States and they paraded him like they do. You know, they have all the cameras and stuff. They basically had basically said, like, it's the end. The drug war's over now. We've gotten our guy.
Yeah.
It's like, first of all, he's not even the leader of it. Number two, they painted him as the boogeyman, and they've always painted Chapo and the Sons as the boogeymen.
But it was really El Mayo.
Yeah, he was a part of the El Mayo faction, which at one point they were close, him and Chapo.
Yeah.
El Mayo and Chapo came up under the Guadalajara cartel many years ago with Rafael Caro Quintero and all these other guys, which if you've watched Narcos, you know that.
Of course, yeah. Narcos Mexico.
Yeah, and they band together and they have the western side of Mexico, the coastal areas, the Jalisco, Sinaloa, that area. And a lot of big ports there, right? Manzanillo's there, a lot of big ports. So they turn drug trafficking inward. And a lot of Mexico has always been a trampoline. When you look at drug trafficking, it starts in Ecuador, Colombia, that area. It then transfers trampolines into the United States. Mexico's your trampoline. Mm-hmm. You follow what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And they, transform drug trafficking. We all know that. But eventually they get into arguments, fights. And what's crazy about the cartel world is they're all rats. They all telling each other. Like, all of them.
Are you referring to that in the capacity to law enforcement or just in general?
Like, if you look into, like, El Chapo's trial, one of the chief witnesses was El Mayo's son, Vicente Zambada. He was his son.
Ooh.
I mean, they do this. And it's way different than, like, Cosa Nostra, the Mafia, where, like, cooperating is a no-no. But then you look at, like...
there's a lot of them that do that.
Yeah. Like, you do it to get people out of the way.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, especially big people. But yeah, when El Mayo was apprehended, I mean, I for years thought he was a CIA asset, personally.
Long before this.
Yeah, I think a lot of people thought that. Because
what made you think that?
Because if you look into his background, his wife had a brother who was a CIA agent in Cuba back in like the 60s. And I forget his name, but I'd interviewed, I don't know if you've ever spoken to Luis Chaparro.
I haven't yet. We're trying to make that happen.
He's a guy you should get on because he had kind of done some deep research on this. I believe his last name is Garcia. And this Garcia, he was in with Castro in the United States and Cuba, and he ended up going out to the West Coast. He lived in California. He started selling marijuana. And he had made inroads. Eventually his sister had met Ishmael and Mayo Sambada. They got married. And a lot of people, I think, for years thought that he was an asset. Remember, he was the only leader of a cartel in 50 years that had never been arrested.
Yep.
Anything.
But part of that also, like the little devil's advocate, is that he was the stone cold opposite of El Chapo. He was quiet in the hills, grandfatherly.
But a lot of guys were like that. There's a lot of traffickers that are like that. And
never
again,
got clipped.
They're so powerful. Does it even matter?
Yeah.
I mean, and people, I think, for a while wondered, how is he able to continue to operate and nobody does anything about it?
Yeah.
But I think in the end, he'll probably die before he sees much prison time anyway. I mean, he's very old.
He's old. What happened there, though? That whole takedown, I've asked a few people about that. That was crazy.
Well, you look at even like the Chapitos, the sons of El Chapo.
Yeah.
Like they're all very interesting. Because like you have like Ivan, who's like kind of, I would say, the most powerful son. He's obviously, I think, the heir apparent to his father. But then you have like the youngest, Ovidio. He's kind of like weak. Like he never really should have been in that life. And his father even knew that. That's why I called him the mouse. He was a very like timid guy. And I think in a way, like they broker with the United States on certain things, like get my brother out and we'll give you this guy, or get this guy. And I'm sure his father even tried to get released. Like his father's in the ADX, right? So the ADX is end of the road. There's no human contact with anybody. And he's been whining for years. He's been in the ADX for years.
That's the last place I'd ever want to be.
And he's in H unit, which is Sam's prisoner. Sam's is special administrative measure, which means a judge has to put you in Sam's. There's only a certain amount of people in Sam's.
They have like a shittier place within that place?
Inside it. There's Range 13, which is...
You're talking about Florence ADX SuperMax in Colorado.
Correct. That Sam's unit is terrorists.
That's like where they have Ramsey Youssef.
Youssef, the shoe bomber, the underwear bomb, like all those guys. And then they have people like El Chapo, Joe Carcernay, the Boston Marathon guy, Dylan Roof, people like that. Yeah. They're in Sam's unit, so they have no human contact with anybody. And Chapo has been writing letters to the judge, Brian Cogan, in his case, and whining about it. I can't see my family. My wife's not even allowed to come here. And I think you have to ask yourself at some point, do we have to look at this and say this is cruel and unusual punishment?
Even for people like that?
Correct.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, we have a series of laws we have in this country where even people like that, and I know I'm not going to say there are people that should have the same laws as us, but you have to treat them in a certain way. But I think he probably even tried to move to maybe get out of that prison. Like, we'll barter. We'll give you this for this.
Right. So he may have been behind the whole.
Which I think's off limits. They'll never let him out of ADX. He's escaped like 3 times. It's never going to happen.
Those were all Mexican prisons, though.
Right. And he's never going to get out of ADX. But if he could broker maybe to like a USP, which is one level below.
Right.
But even like you look at the litigation for these people. I recently talked to an attorney that I didn't have him on my show. It was kind of off the record. But he was he was dealing with a client that was a high-level trafficker. And he told me the trial's a joke. There's no like, they just bring like rats up on the stand and just, they say this happened. It's like, oh, okay, it probably happened. And that's that. Like,
it's not incentivized.
Because there's such a push on, we need to take these people off the street, especially this administration. Because they paint the boogeyman as, the drug trade is the problem, and these are the people that did it. The Ovidio Guzman, the Ivan Guzman, the Chapitos. They didn't create fentanyl. Fentanyl comes from China. It doesn't come from Mexico.
But they do funnel it.
They traffic it.
Yes.
Right. But everybody traffics. They all traffic fentanyl.
Yeah, but they're getting, in all defense here, though, they're getting it
but
across
in the
the
end,
border. They're the experts.
Anybody listening, and I ask you to, has the price, has the amount, has anything in the drug trafficking world changed whatsoever when El Chapo was arrested?
No. It's
Didn't
like
cost any more.
it's like cutting off, a leaf of a tree. Oh well,
right.
you know.
It's like taking a thing of sand out of the beach. It's a complete and utter waste of time. And there's one way to fix it, and they'll never do it because people would be up in arms about it. They're already up in arms
Legalization?
about it. Yes, but it would have to be, and I've heard David Simon talk about this, the creator of The Wire.
Great show.
But I would urge you, if you're a fan of the show, to watch some of his talks that he does. He'll do interviews with PBS, things of that nature. And he's a big advocate for the drug trade, the drug war, not for the drug trade, but the ending of the drug war, because it has completely changed society. And he talks about how, think if we as a country, the people at the top, the president, Congress, all these different people, where they just stopped for a second and looked at what has happened to America, the America they left behind. Those people have never been to Philadelphia or, parts of New York City. Like, they don't know what really goes on. And think if we were to, you look at Kensington in Philadelphia, right?
It's insane.
It's this open air drug market.
Yes.
But if we actually put time into it, it could work. We just piecemeal and throw it into one area with no research and just be like, hey, everybody do drugs here and it's okay. Think if we had places to go where people could do these drugs, right? Because they're going to do them anyway.
Yes.
Whether they're legal or not. It would eliminate the black market where you go to a regulated clinic where drugs are not filled with poison and arsenic and all this different shit. And we give you a platform that's tax-based where we use some of the waste of all the money we've gotten from this war. And we put it into programs for people. And we say, these 5 people, your friends, have all gotten clean. What if we entice you to get clean too? And then maybe we could take some of the vacant properties we have, because we have millions of them around America. We can get some contractors to flip them with government money. And we could put these people into homes. And maybe we can enforce and put them back into the workforce. Because again, we do have an unemployment problem, don't we?
Yes.
I mean, why don't we try to take this
unreported unemployment, by the way.
Right. But and Simon talked about this. We should look at it like the New Deal, which we did after the Great Depression, where we reinforced people to say, you are not doing anything for our economy currently. I mean, you look at 10, 15% of this country, they're completely useless to the economy. They don't pay taxes. They live in another world. And we're talking about homeless, drug addicts, people like that, criminals. They're going to be there, and they're already a problem. So why don't we try to find a way to take a large percentage of them, get them clean, get them help with mental health, and try to reinvigorate the community again. I don't understand why we just let this happen. But what I do, because there's a lot of money behind it.
Yes.
Criminal police departments make, 85% of the arrests are probably drug related.
Yeah, and you've heard, Joe Rogan's made the point for years that you'll look at these cities and they have something called a homeless coordinator that's making $300,000 a year. They're incentivized not to get rid of their job.
Right.
It's like the administration nightmare.
And that's why nothing will change here, because there's so much money in hunting people, basically.
Yeah.
Because we don't know where to put them.
Yeah.
So we just put them in prison.
And it's easy. It's easy to just kind of discard a person and whatever.
And people will always say, it's
sick. That's what they do.
And people will say to me, why would we legalize drugs? What would that do? Look at Kensington. Right, but let's say we actually started with Kensington and we tried it there, and we took all the people that are drug addicts and shooting up on the street, and we put them into a facility, and we just tried and started somewhere. And think if everyone got behind it. But most people don't care because they don't deal with it.
It's not in their backyard.
Yes. Someone in middle America doesn't care, right?
Yeah. So, well, you make a good point, though, too. People started caring about this more when it started happening to suburbia.
White people.
And also what you're talking about, too, that should be said on top of this is that we had, the biggest cartel right here legalized in America with the Sacklers and the disgusting shit that they did to this country, getting people who never would have been addicted to drugs, addicted to all kinds of drugs because you gave them shit they didn't need at way too high of a dose and lied to them about what you were giving them.
Exactly.
I mean, it's just crazy.
I think that's the sad part about most drug addicts, because if you ask them, I mean, none of them chose to become drug addicts.
Yeah.
I mean, it was really just you started doing Oxy because you got in a car accident. Before you know it, you're down on Kensington and Somerset and you're buying a $10 bag.
Yep.
And now it's not even drugs anymore. I mean, fentanyl now is just poison. Any drug now is poison, really. So there's so much cut in drugs that
it's insane.
I mean, they're not drugs. But that's the big thing about regulating an industry. I remember when gambling was regulated. Gambling went from being in pool halls and back rooms. Now it's a regulated business. We have an oversight committee that runs it to make sure that people are getting paid. Casinos are doing things the right way. Think if we had a regulated industry for narcotics where heroin, for instance, without the cut in it and all that, and it's done the right way, people aren't dying on their feet.
It's a really, really tough conversation for a lot of reasons. It's one I struggle with. What I will say is a guy like David Simon, you don't have to agree with all the things he said, but it is absolutely someone you should hear out because, and I don't just say this because I was a fan of the show, but The Wire is one of the most brilliant things ever made.
And look at the show. Actually look at...
It's a documentary with actors.
Yeah. And a lot of the things 20 years ago that they put out there,
same thing today,
have come true.
Yes. Yep.
And I think it really should be required viewing for every person.
I
in
agree,
America
100%.
Because it's a city that
takes place in Baltimore.
Yeah, and you mentioned money, the homeless coordinator. Mm-hmm. Any time you have an incentive or statistic based business where if you do well, you'll get paid more.
Right.
So you look at how drugs have destroyed policing, right? We see policing where we see all these protests and people are, the stop and frisk and all this different stuff, people running in homes, cops and stuff. Think if we eliminated the drug arrest stuff, the low level arrests, and we focused police departments on real crime, violent crime. I heard a stat that in the federal prison population, there are 160,000 federal prisoners in America, and 10% are violent offenders.
Yeah, no, it doesn't surprise me at all.
So it's where are the violent offenders?
Right.
It's well, they're on the street. And that's why crime is insane. And now we have it where we don't really prosecute anyone, or we didn't for a while. Maybe it's changing a little bit, but no civilized society can operate like that.
We've operated in such insane pendulums when it comes to, law and crime. It's not healthy. And they've shifted so fast back and forth, even over the last 15 years, I'd say. It's probably been 4 shifts.
We talked about it earlier. It's one extreme or the other.
Yes.
There's no hey, let's just focus on getting bad people off the street. It's no, let's arrest everybody or let's arrest nobody or
right.
It's never just. And Simon also talked about policing, and he did and looked in the show the people that get promoted are the ones that have the most arrests.
That's right.
So and those people that are promoted, let's say 20 years or 30 years ago, they're now sergeants and teaching younger police how to police.
Yes.
Which is the wrong way. And then 40 years down the road, we look at all our police and we say, integration did nothing. So it doesn't matter if they're black police officers or white police officers. They're just doing it wrong.
Yep.
And we wonder why all this bad stuff happens. Most cops are so scared to even police now too.
Yes.
Because
Works
of
both ways.
consent decrees and stuff.
Yep.
So I don't know how or why people would choose to be a cop nowadays. I've never understood what's the.
Yeah, you're making a great point because they're kind of burning from both ends of the stick and both ends of the candle in the wrong way. On the one hand, they're afraid to do their job because everything's on video and can be changed, and the context can be changed. And on the other hand, when they do their job, they're incentivized to hit a quota, which means they're going to make mistakes, and there's someone who pays for that in some way, whether it be through a fine or a criminal record, or both. On the other end, and so there's a human cost, and it takes away moral judgment. I always talk about this. Everything is just a downstream effect from some asshole who's got to say that they did this statistic so they can win on a Tuesday in November. And I see it. We've done a lot of podcasts in here talking about the difficulty with the court system and what that incentivizes. Like I had Brian McMonagle in here for episode 115, one of the greatest defense attorneys of all time.
Sure.
And he came from the prosecution side, as many do, to the defense side. And, you know, nicest guy ever. I've known him all my life. Literally one of the most moral people I've ever known. And I always wondered, like, how does he, of all people, deal with the idea, not that he would ever say this, but I'll say this from the outside, deal with the idea that he represents some really guilty people, like a lot of them.
Well,
and he's got to sit up at night about that. So it's like, I was asking him how you do that. And the big part, and he was honest about it and struggled with it. But he's like, you got to put the government to the test. You have to make them do their job. That's why I do it.
One of the things that I've, on my, social media, have championed for is, in a way, every person is innocent until proven guilty. Nowadays, they're not, because the public eye, like, for instance, Diddy, prime example. In most people's eyes, Diddy is guilty, right?
Would agree.
Now, if you actually read the indictment, if I told you it was one of the weakest indictments you've ever seen, would you believe me?
Can you explain?
I don't know what's illegal about it, to be honest.
What makes you say that?
Because most of the shit you hear about Diddy is all this stuff that has never happened. For instance, like there's kids in the indictment. He was messing around with kids and stuff. There is none. Okay.
Why do you say there's none?
Because when you read the indictment, I think it's 16 pages. This current one. Now, if they supersede it and add another one, a more serious one, we don't know that.
Okay.
But the current indictment now basically states that he hosted these parties, whether it be at his house or another place. And he had people that got him women and people to come to it. They willingly went to it. Okay? Just like anybody goes to a party.
And they say that in the indictment.
Right. There's nothing illegal about that. Now, if you look into some like the federal laws against, for instance, let's say I meet a woman in Ohio on Instagram and I fly her to my house and we have sex. Technically, I'm breaking a federal law.
If it's consensual, though?
Yes. If I pay her, essentially. Like, let's say I take her to dinner and I buy her a handbag. Technically, that is illegal.
Whoa.
If you read into, like, federal law. Which Diddy was essentially doing. Now, they then go to these parties. They get drunk, which most people do at parties.
Yep.
They take narcotics. Most people do that at parties.
Yeah.
And there are cameras there and they're filmed. Now, I'm not saying that maybe certain people did stuff they didn't want to do. How would that be? How could you prove that, though? What I'm saying is a lot of the indictment is like, I try to find like things that were illegal in it. Look, did he beat Cassie up? Absolutely.
Yeah.
We saw that.
You're not arguing that he's not a scumbag. You're arguing whether or not,
and I'm
the
also
accusations, whether he broke the law.
Yeah, I'm no attorney, but I'm just looking at it and saying the court of public opinion has made it out that he has R-worded hundreds of people. And what will happen ultimately is the feds will get him, his people, all the people that worked for him, they'll flip on him. And he'll be the guy in the end that goes down for it. Because he was essentially, in a way, like the boss of a family, right? Where they'll basically say, well, he told me to do it, so I did it. I got that girl to come here. Now, that girl willingly got on a flight and came there. She was probably paid for it too, and she went willingly.
But there's also like the accusations, like it's kind of the Weinstein method, where there would be especially like with males too, like you got to do this, like I'm gonna fuck you, or you're not getting a record deal.
But again, then bring all of Hollywood up for an indictment. Then
they all do that.
Yeah, I mean that's a tale as old as time, man. I'm not saying it's right.
Type idea.
Yeah, I'm not saying it's right, but I mean, if let's say you're at a Diddy party, you're like some up and coming singer, you're attractive, beautiful girl. I mean, you're bordering on like he comes to you and says, "Hey, you want to hook up? I got you next time you need something." How much is that going? That goes on a lot, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's
like we're bordering on like,
and like this. People aren't going to like hearing this, but when you look at it legally, you can't say that that's not a very odd, uncomfortable gray area.
That's what I'm saying.
It's not necessarily black and white, unfortunately.
And that's my point. Like, I think you're close on a lot of things to like legal behavior. Like it's not as cut and dry as you think. Now in the media, we've been made to hate him, which is fine. I get it. But all I'm saying is, and we see this a lot in society where, you know, we hear something, the person's already guilty. We don't give them their day in court.
Yes.
You know, and then when they get off, it's like, oh, what a great guy. I cannot believe people did that. It's like, wait, hold on. A year ago, you were saying.
That's right.
You know, like.
It's a problem. Yeah.
I don't know if you follow that case in Idaho.
Koberger?
Yeah.
I've seen you tweeting about this.
Like,
you think it's a weak case?
Insanely.
Why? He's the one who allegedly killed the 4 college students.
Now again, this is why predicting this stuff can be hard because all we know is what we know, right? There's a gag order on a lot of this stuff. And even in the Diddy case, if they supersede the indictment tomorrow, I could look really stupid. I'm just only going off what we know now. But what we know now about Brian Koberger, okay? Have you seen a murder weapon? No. Doesn't exist.
No.
Have you seen him there?
Seen him at the scene of the
Have
crime?
you seen any photos, video?
No.
Have you heard him there?
No.
Okay. Do you know that his car was there?
They did.
No,
they
a
tracked
car
his
was there.
phone, right?
Hold on. A car was there. A car was there that is similar to his car. Which, by the way, when they first put the year out, they got it wrong. The year of the car. Okay. Number 2, phone pings do not put you at a location. They put you in an area, but they don't put you at a location. For instance, in Moscow, Idaho, there might only be 2 cell towers, 3 cell towers. It could ping 5 miles away. Just because he's in Moscow doesn't mean he committed this crime. There's very little DNA other than a small amount on a knife sheath. Okay.
Were they able to match it to him?
No. Oh yeah, they matched him. That's how they found him, through illegal means, through DNA websites. They went to the feds, and the feds basically helped them get the profile, and they pinpointed it to his father. Now remember, they also.
But it was on a knife sheet.
It was on a sheath.
Yeah. Where they.
It was wedged in like the mattress, basically on the side.
Wouldn't that be pretty? Even if they got it surreptitiously, which is a separate argument, isn't that pretty?
But what if I also told you, which this has also been put out, there were multiple other male DNAs found in the house, not his, including blood that wasn't his. And number 2,
did he have partners doing it with him?
Possibly, or just was other people. Number 2, what if I told you the house was a party house? A lot of people went there. Could be anybody. There's also no audio, video. There's no surveillance. Nothing puts him at the house. Nothing other than circumstantial evidence. But he kind of looks like a crazy guy, doesn't he?
It might be an Amanda Knox kind of thing.
But what constitutes that?
Right.
Carlo Gambino looked like a regular grandfather.
But he was a bad guy.
But he was probably the most influential mafia boss of all time.
Yep.
You know? So you can't go off that. But we also add the fact that there's Reddit. There's people like Nancy Grace. There's people that, don't put any they just don't like the person. So they don't give him the opportunity to defend himself. We live in America where you have the opportunity. And remember, the judge agreed with people like me because he moved the case out of Moscow to Boise because he realized they're not going to get a fair trial there. Right. Throw in the fact, how do we know that crime scene wasn't contaminated? The roommates waited 8 hours to call the police after it.
Oh, I didn't know that.
There were roommates, surviving roommates, 2 of them.
And they waited 8 hours?
Bethany Funk and Dylan Mortensen were the surviving roommates.
Were they...
They were up and texting each other during all this shit.
Do you think... Was it shock?
I mean, they were texting each other.
Like, I know,
hey,
but
I think someone's in the house.
Right.
You don't hear that? 4 people were basically decapitated. You didn't hear that?
Yeah, gruesome.
And also throw this in. How could a person who is in his 20s, is in college, who has never killed anyone as far as we know, he manages to systematically take out 4 people in 8 minutes and doesn't leave any blood, hair. There's none in his car, none in his house, nothing.
It's very sketchy.
Also, I think sometimes you have to, when you look at these cases as like a true crime person, why would he do this? What would be the motive? He's a guy going for his doctorate. he didn't know
Well,
these.
sometimes people are just a crazy person,
Right, and that's true.
I mean, Jeffrey Dahmer existed.
But he has no known psychiatric problems, as far as we know. He didn't know them at all. He didn't know any of them. But what social media does is, oh yeah, he followed some of them online. No, he didn't. The family said he did not know any of them. So like you have to weigh what's true and what's not, right? And like I just think we have to start looking at people and saying, we live in America, and if that was your brother or father or uncle or whoever, or your boyfriend, wouldn't you want them to get a fair trial?
Sure.
And if they're guilty, they should go to prison.
And that's the difficult thing. It's like when someone seems really guilty, you want to be like, oh, throw the book at him or whatever. But and just like you were talking about with Florence ADX, like someone's a horrible person, put him in the worst bottom of the hole. You know, I don't say this to be a total bleeding heart or whatever, but there's a happy medium there. And I don't mean to say happy, but there's a medium with this stuff to where you have to be, if you're America, this great, beautiful experiment that, you know, we built this document, the Constitution, that gives people these inalienable rights. There has to be the shining beacon on the hill type symbolism, and we need to exhibit that here. And the places where you most exhibit it are at the times when you want to exhibit it the least.
If Brian Koberger took them out, he should go to prison.
100%.
And he should probably face the DP at the end of the day. But he is a person that is a citizen in America and deserves a fair trial, regardless of what he did or who he did it to. And it is the state or federal government's duty to prove that. Again, it's not my problem to prove. It's your problem.
Yes.
You brought it. So a state prosecutor, it's your job. And my job as a defense attorney is to poke holes in what you did. And I'm sure McMonagle, I would guess for me, if you ask me that question and I'm an attorney, I would say because everybody in this country deserves a fair trial.
That's what it is.
Some of them, you know, it's not my job to judge. I don't care. I'm here to be paid on getting them off and giving them a fair opportunity.
Yes.
And
part of it is what if the government can throw the book at them in a way that's wrong, what are they going to do to the next guy?
And there's thousands of people per year that do 30, 40 years in prison. And guess what? We find out somebody lied or some, you know, cop was an asshole. Whatever.
Yeah, we had a case on this show that we handled, and my friend Tyree, he's out of prison now. He sat in prison for almost 30 years.
30 years.
It's crazy.
Think about that. How old are you? You're like
32.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's basically your whole life.
Yes.
Like that's insane to think about.
And he's still not fully exonerated.
And guess what they do? They basically sometimes they'll give you some money or something. You might win like a suit or something. But a lot of the time it's just have a good life.
It's crazy, man.
And it's like, well, wait, hold on a second.
And then you read the case file and you see the kind of shit that was pulled. And you're like, what? Like in America, this happened? That's
why like I'll never. And it's hard because there's sometimes you'll hear things and it's like you don't like they're not like I'm not trying to say that I don't think anyone should go to prison or anything. Like if you do a crime and you're a bad person, you should go to prison. But
absolutely,
we also have to give people their due court. You know, even like that Mangione kid. You know,
you have to give them due process for sure.
Like you know, and like in that case, I think it's going to be really hard to find 12 people that'll find him guilty.
You really?
Yes.
Why?
Because you have to have all 12 of them in unison agree. Do you know how many people hate insurance companies?
Oh, well, actually, yeah.
How many people have been screwed, even on like a low level?
Meaning not on the facts, but find them not guilty because it's a symbol.
And you look at that case too. I mean, it's so pathetic. I mean, like the federal government, why did they pick that case up? They don't handle murder cases.
Well, I mean, he went across state lines.
It's
a federal case.
Let the state of New York handle it.
But they're all going to handle it. It's such a big case, man.
Of course.
It's a public
We're going to get
company,
promotions out of it. That's why we're going to handle it.
Well, it's not actually, I'm going to see this less cynically. It's not even just that. It is such a public case. It's one where, you know, someone of a public company that is like the biggest insurance giant in the country was gunned down in the biggest city in the world.
It was not in aid of, like, for instance, they'll handle murders in aid of racketeering,
sure.
For instance. But like handling a singular murder case is a waste. They should be doing other things. Let the state of New York handle it. What I'm trying to say is, though, it's a resource based case where like they're putting a lot of resources into this one thing. Where I mean, let the state of New York handle it, and you go out with more pressing business and handle the things going on in New York City, right? In the Southern District, handle the cartel groups, handle the, I just think it's a weird waste of resources. But look at how they parade him out. And they make him out to be like he's, El Chapo. Or
that's probably excessive. It's just like a lot of, this is what I struggle with in America on so many issues, man. A lot of things can be true at the same time. The kid something obviously happened to him, right? Like something mentally happened to him. It's my best guess and your best guess what that is. I'm not a doctor, but something went off with him. He, in the midst of that happening, recognized something that is a huge problem. The health insurance industry is a disgrace. We've allowed it to be a disgrace. I'm talking about that from the governmental level. It's something that should be totally fucking reformed. But you also can't just go pick out a fucking technically law-abiding citizen and blow him away on 57th Street in the middle of everyone in society. Like, you gotta, like, and I'm not saying that it doesn't mean that the system's not going to continue to grind to a halt like it always does and change doesn't happen. And you're like, well, this is the anarchy that could spark it happening. I get that argument, but we gotta find another way as a society, even if it's way harder.
And yeah, his way of doing it, like, again, it didn't change anything. I mean,
no.
My premium's still the same amount, and like I still have the same
Mine
rules.
went up.
Yeah, so it's like, I mean, there was no real. It's not like anyone was like, "Oh my God, let's rise up and fix this." Like, this is a problem. Some insular CEO was killed. I mean, in the end, but you even look at him. Like, I find people that do these things like he didn't think at all about it. Even like, why do you still have all the belongings with you?
Very strange.
Like, if he didn't have them with him, he probably would have a decent shot.
Yeah,
you can't make him out in
the whole thing's off. And I'm not gonna, we're not gonna go crazy here, but like you look at it the first time and you're almost like what did he like get MK Ultra'd or something?
If you'd have told me that was the kid that did it, like when I first saw it, like I've looked enough into like crime and like hitmen and stuff. Like that was
I was getting the Nadu breakdown the instant he was caught. Like, here's why he's not a pro. Like step by step, play by play.
Like that was like I saw that and I'm thinking like even the way he handled the gun, it like no, but if you watch the video, he handled the malfunction. He was just like boom, boom, boom. Like it didn't even faze him.
Yeah.
Look,
he didn't put it in the head. That was a point you made right there. He's like professionals.
A hitman will shoot you in
the
the
head.
Yeah. 2 in the head. That's it.
Like it was a very technical breakdown.
Yeah, they're not going to shoot you in like the back or something. Like you're hitting him in the head twice, boom. And he also like him going to Central Park was like very smart. Like he did smart things, but then it's like you still have the shit on you like in some McDonald's in Altoona. You still have a lot of the stuff. It's just like I don't know. But then you throw in the fact that he's attractive. People like I mean it's some of these trials are huge, and that's going to be a big one. But
yeah, that one's gonna be a weird one.
But you look at when the feds come.
Mm-hmm.
Like these kids today don't think enough about that when they do these things. Like I'm not even talking about kids like him. I'm talking about like young kids in the streets that are out banging on people and selling drugs, and they're really just going to hit you on RICO.
Mm-hmm.
And they're not even doing that now. Now they're hitting you with something called a 922C, which if you're a felon, you cannot possess a weapon. And the feds are basically going out, and that's how they're taking people off the street now. They're going to find, and they're going to go to an Instagram, right? And I see it in Philly all the time. I've looked into this a ton, where you'll find these young kids, these rappers, these kids in the streets doing stuff. Yep. They have pictures where they have weapons clearly in their, waistband or whatever. And they're looking them up and they're saying, Joe Blow is a felon. He did 2 years. Why does he have a gun on him? Let's bring him in.
Mm-hmm.
And they're going to hit you with 4 years straight out of the gate. They're just going to take you off the street.
Yeah.
And why they do that and why you're off the street, they'll keep your name there. And they'll just keep watching you. And they'll say, okay, so-and-so's back in the streets. How does he have all this Amiri and all these chains and stuff? Where's he making his money from?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let's look through him a little bit more. Let's put a little surveillance on him and his people. They're at 21st and Cambria. Let's put some surveillance on him. And it's real simple. How
They're
they do
wearing
this.
it on social media. It's crazy.
Yeah. And a lot of these guys, like, there's a case out of Philadelphia, this guy Arab. I don't know if you know Arab. He was a big rapper. Drake shouted him out.
AR-AB?
AR-AB. Assault rifle ab. He was a huge rapper.
I'm not familiar with this case.
Just AR-AB. He was on Vlad TV many times. This is a guy who was a street guy, and everything in his songs he was actually doing. To the point of, in his case, they brought the lyrics up. He went on Vlad and talked about, I did this, I did that. And they just basically they watched him.
It's like that scene in Better Call Saul. I think the very first scene where like he makes this argument and then the opposing attorney comes up and just goes, and then wheels in a TV, just plays the video of everything happening and walks away.
That's exactly what it is. And even in his case, they brought the lyrics up and his attorney tried to argue this is just creative expression. It's not literal.
Yeah.
Then again, though, it was. They actually tied it to all the shit he was doing, and he got 45 years.
45
Yeah. They basically, he was selling a lot of narcotics. They surveilled his entire operation. I mean, you have a guy on the street, he's got $500,000 on his kitchen table. Where's your job? What do you do for a living?
From? Yeah.
And that's how they get people. And a lot of the time when the feds come to you and they kick your door in, case is already built.
Yeah.
So you fighting
we
it
talk
is
about that a lot.
total waste of time.
Yeah.
They're going to come to you and say, you have two options here. Take our plea. So instead of giving you football numbers, we'll give you 10 years.
Right.
Or cooperate. And you're dead anyway. So do what you got to do.
Yeah,
you're not going to beat this.
Yeah.
No one's going to beat you. You're not going to beat us. We have everything. We've already built our case here. And that's the choice they give you. And they already have it built, so you're done. You know?
Yeah, my issue with some of those, and like a lot of them, they are making it that way, and it's pretty clear. And yeah, like they're getting their guy. There's other ones, though, again, you can talk about it slipping through the cracks, where they're incentivized to make a case. They rely on rats who they
that's
pressure.
all they rely on, really.
Yeah, but they really pressure people who are totally full of shit, and they know it, too.
Well,
and then they make a case that's bullshit.
I saw recently that the FBI on the street right now has, I think, like...
Oh, you tweeted this
20,000 federal informants.
Yeah. You're like,
and they're
don't
spending
talk to
like
anybody.
and they're spending like $500 million a year on that. And these are informants that are informing on everything from terrorism to narcotics. Like, if the FBI didn't have informants, they wouldn't make any case.
Right.
I mean, other than the Mafia. The one thing the government did was stamp out the mob. They've done it better than anybody.
Yeah.
The American Mafia, from where it once was to where it is now, is pretty unbelievable.
Yeah, I knew through my grandpa, I knew the guy Jules Bonavolanta, who was on that famous team from the 70s, 80s, and 90s. He's the guy who like invented Donnie Brasco, and then his career ended with taking down Gotti. So he worked with Kallstrom and Giuliani and fucking Louis Free and all these guys. And like part of it was they kind of, and this is my takeaway, they knew how to think like those guys. Like a guy like Jules came from the streets of Newark, right? He watched the mob like intimidate his dad, who owned a fucking laundry shop.
That's what Giuliani did too.
Yeah.
Really. You know one thing about Giuliani, a lot of people don't know this. His father was involved with the mob. A lot of people don't know that. He'll never tell you that.
I bet he won't.
His father was connected to the mob. Like he was a leg breaker for the mob.
A leg breaker?
Yeah. He was an enforcer, sure.
Really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
He'll never tell you that, but
I wasn't going to ask him, but
yeah, he always keeps that stuff out. But he, you even look at where he was at one point, where he is now. It's kind of wild.
Yeah, it's hilarious to me. He was the most popular guy in the fucking country after 9/11. Like he was at the high of the high. He was America's mayor. He could have rode off like that, and he's just kind of gone down this stream in his career. And I don't say that because like, oh, he was up next to Trump. That's not what I'm saying. It's like the guy he's become in doing that, and we've heard the stories on this podcast. John Kiriakou talked about how he tried to sell him a pardon. I mean, he operates like a mobster.
Yeah, he just became kind of also like a zany, weird, like just weird guy. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, you look at where the mob was at one point. I mean, they were literally you know, and I know we won't go into this deep, but like they literally were involved in getting rid of a president.
Yes.
Like I think if you don't believe that the mob had involvement in that,
Yes, they had involvement.
you're crazy.
Yeah, I agree with you.
I mean, Carlos Marcello is, in my opinion, the most influential, successful mob boss of all time out of New Orleans.
Why do you say him over Trafficante?
They were both very powerful.
Okay.
They were both in unison, very close people together. They were very good friends. Marcello, you look at the swath of territory that he had, whether it was, he had people in Texas, I mean, all sorts of areas. But he hated Bobby Kennedy. Bobby Kennedy. And remember, the mob helped Kennedy get elected, right?
Yes.
They won Illinois because of
Dallas and Chicago.
Yes. And Kennedy's father was a bootlegger, very involved with the mob years ago. And they feel the mob that they owed him something. Kennedy comes out of nowhere. He starts hassling in, bothering people. And a lot of people don't know that Marcello was the person that he came down on most. He dropped him in Guatemala. I don't know if you've heard about that. Like,
yeah.
Yeah.
Lou Ferrante talked about that.
Yeah, and Marcello hated him.
Yep.
And they basically said, look, let's not kill him. Let's just get rid of John. And there's just too many. I mean, Lee Harvey Oswald and his connections to Marcello. And like, if you even look into the Martin Luther King assassination,
That one's a mess.
James Earl Ray was really connected to the mob in New Orleans.
Oh, you're putting that back to the mob.
I'm not saying they were involved, but and if you look into Marcello, he hated blacks. He was a fervent racist, which is weird because he's
An Italian mob boss not liking.
well. But it's weird though. He is from Sicily and he was actually born in Tunisia.
Oh, it's the funniest thing because like we always joke about like the stereotypical racist like Italian guy, especially from the mob, and it's like my guy. It's in your bloodlines.
Yeah,
Like,
that's true. And
it's like Clayton Bigsby.
right. But if you look at like even like FBI files, there was a lot of connection between James Earl Ray and the mob. But either nor there, they were this at one point. They were going after. I mean, they had every industry in America under their control. New York City at one point was
They built that. I always point to that. They built this
Yes.
fucking thing right here.
everything from the concrete being poured
Yep.
to everything.
Yep.
And now, I mean, if I told you some of the things that I've come across as doing what I do, like they're worried about me. You know, that's where they are now. There's certain guys that are worried about me, and it's
They
like,
dude's getting too loud.
yeah, it's like, or you know, one of them has a podcast, which is like, if you'd have told me that years ago, or
Talking about Merlino?
yeah, allegedly he was the boss for years.
Allegedly.
Yeah, I mean, but it's crazy. You know, that's kind of where we are. So
Yeah. What do you? Because did you go on his show?
yeah,
And I don't want to say something you said off camera. You don't want to talk about that part, right?
whatever. I don't care.
So, but all right, was this the show that happens now with him and Lil Snuff? Which I gotta give them this. Those guys hustle, man. They're working
Yeah.
all the time. That concept was
Yeah,
you
I
originally
had-
floated that a few
I-
years ago.
Yeah, I had an idea to do it. You know, we had tried to make it happen. You know, and this has been talked about. There's another guy that's in my world that, you know, him and I were kind of involved with it. We had the idea. It was a tough time around those times as far as getting it and making it happen. Now I want to make this clear. I've known Snuff a long time.
Yeah.
He is a perfect host for Joey.
Oh, dude, he's so good.
And they know each other. They've known each other for years. It's just a perfect kind of
Yeah.
in unison thing. And it's gotten to the point where, you know, it's right where they want it to be.
Yeah,
And
for people out there, by the way, I think we kind of said this, but just to be clear, we're talking about Joey Merlino,
Yeah.
who is allegedly the longtime reputed mob boss of the Philadelphia
now I will
Tiny
tell you,
family.
I don't, in all the work that I do, I will tell you straight out, I don't believe he's still involved with the mafia. I don't.
Today.
Yeah, I don't.
I would, you know what's crazy? And because it seems like he would be, I might believe you on that, actually.
And I've also said, and I'll go one further. I think saying that he is a mafia member is also a little far.
Well, he was a made guy.
Do we know that though? And here's
I mean-
hold on a second. Here's
Dante and Luigi's, dude.
he was never charged in that. He wasn't.
No, he wasn't, but,
But what I'm trying to say is,
allegedly.
hear me out for a second. And I've been called a Joey simp. Everyone thinks I stand up for him and stuff. What I'm trying to say is, he was the son of a guy. His father was Chucky Merlino, was the underboss
Yes.
Philly mob under Nicky Scarfo. very close. Him and Nikki stabbed a guy when they were 20. They were very close. Yeah. And all these
brought them together for the rest of their life.
They came up together, and then their sons, nephews all got involved too. Uh-huh. And Joey was involved with his friends. They were out, gambling, things like that. Were they gangsters or criminals? Yeah, but I think Joey kind of constitutes himself as just a street guy. I don't know if, I have a way that I can. There's a website I track that has ceremony dates, like mob induction ceremonies. And I don't even know when he would have been made. The boss at the time, John Stanfa, and him were.
I know, but we don't we don't have all the inductions. I know there's been a lot of rats, but
no, I know
how many of these fucking
yeah.
ceremonies happen? I'm taking and burning my fucking head. It happens in a basement in Atlantic City in Ducktown. You know what I mean?
If there was a way that we could prove it, I would, as a betting man, I would say it's a coin flip that he's been made.
Made?
Yes.
Let alone I think
it's just
skipping the.
I think it's just
in charge.
I think it's just assumed. I think it's assumed that because of who he was this larger than life guy. But ask yourself, what do we actually know
ever
about?
Would have let that happen.
But what do we? He didn't care. He still doesn't care. He does what he wants.
He does do what I've heard that.
In his friend group, he's the guy.
I've heard he just walks into a restaurant anywhere and just rips a bogue right in the middle of the place and no one says shit.
And I remember as a kid, I heard him, he called into sports radio too. He called into Howard Eskin one time.
Did he call in as him?
Yes, and they were hassling him about Eric Lindros, the papers. He was hanging out with Eric, the hockey player, Eric Lindros. And people thought he was giving him tips and stuff.
I remember that.
But what do we really know about Joey? Has he been involved with bookmaking? Yeah, he admitted that. He went to jail for receiving stolen property.
Right.
But all the other stuff is just possibly, allegedly.
I know the mob has made use in the past of the media having a front guy for stuff. We've seen that. They have the quote-unquote street boss. They're he's the fucking boss. Like who was Fat Tony Salerno is a good example. But he was still, even though he wasn't the boss, he was effectively the underboss of that family.
Let me ask you this. Have you ever heard Joey on wiretap talking about that kind of stuff? No.
I mean, I don't know, but
all I'm saying is
I don't in front of me though.
I don't think he was your prototype. If he were the mob boss, I don't think he was your prototypical one. I think he was just kind of someone who was able to find a way to find a weak, because John Stanfa is the weakest boss in the history of the mafia in any family. He was insane. He was making people that weren't even Italian. He was just a lunatic.
Yeah, not well.
I think Joey recognized he was probably weak. A lot of the younger guys supported Joey.
I'm trying to remember the timeline though, because Scarfo goes away in '89, I think, right?
Yeah, it was early '90s.
Yeah. So was Stanfa immediately the guy after him, or was there one guy in between?
So Stanfa's an interesting story because I don't know if you know, but when Angelo Bruno was killed in 1980,
oh yeah, blown away in the car.
Stanfa was the driver.
Yeah.
Stanfa somehow gets out of it because we found out he was in on it many years later. Yeah. He goes to prison. He comes out, and he comes out at the right time because all the Scarfo people had been arrested. Chucky, Nicky, Philip Leonetti, all these people.
Scarfo was crazy, bro.
Yes, he was. He's insane.
Yeah.
They all get arrested, and there's kind of this power vacuum. And Stanfa had been in Philly for years. He was a Sicilian, but he was old school. He comes in, recognizes that there's no one in the lead. He kind of assumes the role because no one else was going to do it. And I think Joey at that point was the right age. He has these friends. They're doing stuff in the streets too. What I'm saying is I'm not doubting that he's a mob guy. Of course he was at one point. But is he your prototypical guy, a John Gotti or a Vinny Gigante? No, I don't believe he is.
Well, he was young. Who was it? It was the Cianglini twins were running around with him.
Yeah,
and stuff. They had their crew, and it was they were the young Turks. Stanfa was the old guard, and then Stanfa goes away. Who the fuck else was there?
But that's what I'm saying. Is it conceivable to think that he's just a street guy, young guy? He was larger than life, so they painted him as this.
Look, I could see it on the one hand that him being the guy who then took all the publicity is useful for the guys like the Legambis of the world who might have been really running it even back then, possibly under your theory. But I could also see how he was a terrible distraction and would have been a guy that they would have been yo, fuck this, get rid of this dude.
But we were talking earlier about you don't beat the feds. Joey beat the feds multiple times.
Yeah.
I mean, he beat multiple murder cases.
Yeah, what was the name of his lawyer again? Fucking great lawyer.
Eddie Jacobs.
Yeah.
Still his lawyer.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah,
it's just
still his lawyer, but he's not in the mob.
he's a guy who he's a fascinating guy. I just think it's interesting to think about his career and how
You think we should have him on here?
Yeah, for sure. He's just a really interesting guy, I think. He's
If we do it, we'll bring up him and Lil Snuff, and you got to come up too.
if they'll have me, I'll join, sure.
If they'll have you.
Yeah,
He's gonna ask them, not me.
No, I just don't. I don't want to impose. You know, and here's the thing with him: like, there are things that I think when you're dealing with someone like him, right? Even like Red Shea, who you had on recently, those guys, some of them won't even speak to me because I've had.
Yeah, you said Red wouldn't talk to you.
I don't know if Red said he wouldn't. I think Red kind of just was like, I don't know that I want to talk to him because he had rats on. And I was sad about that because I think Red's super interesting. I've talked to him.
He's a real dude.
Yeah, we've talked on DM and stuff, but I just think these are guys who they come from another world, and even someone like myself who, like, I've always made it clear, I'm not in the streets. I'm just a guy who had interest.
You're an
in
analyst.
Yeah, I had this thing that I was interested in.
Right.
I had some downtime and I started it.
You're
I never
the Chris
thought
Collinsworth of the mob.
Well, Collinsworth played.
All right.
I never played.
All right. You're the Chris Berman of the mob. There you go.
That's, I guess, that's true.
We'll do that.
But yeah, look, it's been an interesting life I've had so far. But
Well, I gravitate towards it too because I don't know if I told you this, but when I was like 15, I think, I got assigned for European history. We had to do our big research paper. And the topic I was assigned was the Sicilian Mafia.
Oh, wow.
The shit over there.
Yeah.
So I start digging into that and I went right down the rabbit hole. And this was like when YouTube had all the documentaries on there of the mob. And I would just go watch those in my free periods, like during the day, just like
the ones that were on A&E and stuff?
Oh, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Eating it all up and getting the whole history, researching it on Wikipedia. I knew every fucking like, it's all still in there. And at the time, no one fucking gave a shit about this stuff. And so after a while, I'm like, all right, whatever. I know all this shit, but it's worthless. And then in like 2016, 2017, 2018, people started fucking making content on it. I'm like, where the fuck you been? But this was the shit. Like, it was so fascinating to me because, again, like I talked about a minute ago, but whenever, you can't really see it on the board here, but on the other side of Jersey City, on the far end of that wall right there, you got Route 78. And every time I come around that bend when you're coming past Bayonne and the skyline comes into view, it's a great fucking view. Every time I'll be on that road, doesn't matter what time of day, I'll look up and I will remember, like, holy shit, not one building there went up without their approval, anything post 1920.
And they were making, like, off every yard of concrete, they were making a certain amount of money.
Yeah.
Like, just think about the minute, like, I mean, how many yards of concrete report? You know, it's insane. And they all ran those companies.
Yes.
Like Paul Castellano and all these different people, they all had their own companies. And they put, monopolies on everything. It's just, I just am fascinated by what the government was able to do in ridding the country of them, how they did it. That's the one thing this government did at a good level is eliminate the mob.
What do you think of the RICO law, which is effectively, that was the ace in the hole?
Yeah, it's a really questionable law, to be honest.
Why do you say it's questionable?
Because you're basically putting someone at the top and you're making them responsible for everything that happens under it. And what I've learned is in like a lot of these cases involving, let's say, an underboss or a consigliere, they're basically are people that are charged with things that they were never involved in. So we're putting this group of things and everyone below it just is in automatically. Case in point, for instance, when John Gotti, they had the tapes, the Gotti tapes they were called, where John went up to this apartment above the Ravenite.
Yep.
And they recorded.
And they had it on the lamp post.
Yeah, they recorded hundreds of hours of tapes.
The lamp.
Yep. John's consigliere guy, Frank Lacasio, was up there a lot of the time. But you never heard him. He never said anything. He just said, okay.
Oh, yeah, Gravano was the underboss. Sorry, I was fucked up.
Frankie Loke was the third.
Yeah,
he was the guy who had the Bronx.
Yeah.
And Frank ultimately, outside of God, he got life as well. And no one ever talks about Frankie Loke. And Frankie Loke said at his sentencing, the only thing I'm guilty of is being a friend of John Gotti's, which is true because if you look at why he went to prison, when you're in the mafia, particularly an underboss, if the boss is in the room and says, he's got to fucking go, you're just going to be there and you're going to, yep, we agree. Because that's what you're supposed to do, right? You don't say, hey, no, I think we should let him live. He's a good guy. Doesn't work like that.
You're like leaning into the lamp. No, he should live.
Right. And nobody knew that, right? So you're not going to speak up and say anything.
Yeah.
That's what they got Frankie Loke on. Basically, just being there.
Yeah.
So it's, I just think it's questionable and like, and in some cases, it's not even that close. Like there's a case it's actually about 10 years ago out of the Bronx, a mob associate, Michael Meldish. He was a big drug trafficker, part of this group called the Purple Gang years ago. He was kind of like a Jewish guy who was very dangerous, very depraved, and he was kind of separate from the mob, but he was very close with them. The mob killed him back in 2016, I believe it was, 2014, around there. And the governing body of the Lucchese crime family were basically all put in prison because the guy at the top, the feds allege, was the one that ordered it. And everyone below him, underboss, everybody, they were all involved in it because they were part of the governing body. Now, the underboss was a guy, Stephen Crea. He may have not even been a part of the meeting, but he was just the underboss. So they threw him in on it too. He wasn't there. He didn't pull the trigger.
There's part, and I'm with you because again, you got to give them the same due and look at it constitutionally. So I do think there's certainly some questionable far reaches of the RICO law, and I think we can point that out easily. And I get that. Part of me, like when you talk about Loke, for example, it's like you're hanging out with John Gotti though, and I can, maybe if I can't, off the top of my head, prove this in a court of law. Yeah, he was in the mob. It's like you get what you sign up for.
But it's not illegal to be in the mob.
It's not. Well, all right. Are you saying that from a technicality perspective?
It's not. There's no law against that.
But if you go into the mob and you're made in the mob, or even if you're associated with the mob
it's
knowingly,
the same thought of
you're perpetuating a criminal enterprise.
But it's the same thought as if you're in a motorcycle club. Most of them will just say, I'm a motorcycle enthusiast.
Yeah.
There's no law against being like, I guess I get what you're saying. Like it's a gang per se. And yeah, I guess in terms of, is he guilty of being a mobster? Yeah. But was he guilty of murder? That's where it gets, and the government's favorite word is conspiracy.
Yes. For a lot of reasons.
Yeah. And any Tom, Dick, and Harry can be arrested and put in a federal prison because of conspiracy. Right. So you could just be on the phone talking about what they perceive as narcotics, not have a job, and they could say, well, I got a quick story for you about drugs. This is insane.
Hit me.
This is a guy you should probably have on, actually. A friend of mine. I've interviewed him. He was a guy out of Baltimore. He did about 10 years for selling cocaine. He definitely did it. He admitted to it. Lived a tough life growing up, sold cocaine. He gets out about 10 years ago. He's trying to have a straight and narrow life. He was a UFC fan. And in the Baltimore area, there was an event. He was going to go with a friend of his to an event. The friend calls him and says, like a few days before, hey, you want me to bring some of the girls along, our friends? Day before the fight, I think he told me, he called the guy. He said, yo, you bringing those 2 white girls or no? They go, the fight, whatever. He gets indicted. They were listening to his phone calls and perceived that 2 white girls was 2 kilos. They come to him and say, you're a felon.
Yeah.
You're on supervised release, okay? Because, and you know what that is. That means you can't
do anything.
Yeah, right.
It's a tail.
So they go to him and say, we'll give you a plea. Take it or go to trial. Just like we talked about earlier.
Mm-hmm.
He said, I'm not going to fight it. So I think he ended up doing 1.5 years. All because of something he did on the phone.
Yeah,
now it had nothing to do with drugs.
Yeah, no, I hear you. You ever see the case of Raj Rajaratnam, the hedge fund guy?
I feel like I've heard that before. I don't know.
Okay, so Raj at the time, he was indicted in 2009, right after the financial crisis. He's one of the greatest investors to ever live. Gets found guilty in 2011. and at the time was given the longest sentence ever for insider trading. It was like 11 years. Mm-hmm. And as a kid, because I was like post-financial crisis, I was following like the ins and outs of how the world collapsed. Like it was such a fascinating story, like dark, the whole bit. And so I followed a lot of that stuff. And I followed that case, which was obviously litigated in the media. I thought he was guilty as all hell. Seemed like fucking slam dunk case to me. Years later, I get connected with him. And he wanted to come on the podcast. This ended up being episode 87. And I hopped on the phone with him on a video call. And I told him to his face, I said, yeah, I thought you were extremely guilty, no problem. But I'd love to talk with you about it. You're also like one of the smartest guys in the history of Wall Street, no matter what happened here. So he was like, no problem. And he's like, just do me a favor, like look into the case. I said, you got it. So I actually prepped the shit out of this. It's a podcast I'm not proud of because I think this is part of the reason why me not prepping podcasts works well, because like I was so ready to go with that I couldn't shut the fuck up.
You knew too much.
Yeah. And, he liked it because like I knew his case, but looking back on it, I would have much rather like him go through all the shit. But I remember looking through it, and my dad's an attorney, not a criminal attorney, but he was looking through the case too. And we're like, are we crazy or is this guy innocent? And a big part of the problem, the biggest problem in the case was that at the time he was the first guy ever on Wall Street that was wiretapped. And he was wiretapped for like 3 years. They were trying to get him because they didn't want him. They wanted Steve Cohen. Right. And you know about that, sure. Obviously. Like he was the basis of the show Billions. And they're like, oh, the way they looked at it, they're like, this fucking immigrant, we'll get through him. He's an idealist. Like we'll just scare the shit out of him. And, he'll get a slap on the wrist, lose some prestige, but he'll be back. And, we'll get Steve Cohen. So he didn't crack at all, bro. He fucking, like, he went and talked to them without a lawyer the day he got arrested. They spent like $1.5 million on his arrest in New York City. He didn't see it coming. And he goes to trial. And people are like, are you nuts? Like, what are you doing? They litigate this in the media. Obviously, like, hook, line, and sinker got everyone, including me. And with the wiretaps, two things. Number one, they were got illegally. And it was proven in court in the Franks hearing that they were gotten illegally. The judge said it. The FBI lied. They shouldn't have gotten this, but I'll let them in the trial, which is like fucking, this is on record. It's like, even if he were guilty of sin, he never should have gone to trial, because the whole case was the basis of that and one rat who was a really bad guy. Then they go to trial and they take these two, you see this all in all your mob cases you look at. They take these 2-3 years of wiretaps and they boil it down to like a few things here and there. Yeah. And after he's found guilty, the judge cashes in on it, opens up his own private law firm where they specialize in defending against insider trading. That's not a conflict of interest. But he goes on PBS Frontline and he admits, and mind you, he made all these mistakes in the trial, but he said, yeah, the wiretaps are tough because you're kind of guilty no matter what. And the interviewer's like, what do you mean? And he goes, well, I can take one sentence of you at 5 o'clock on a Tuesday in 2008 where you're on the phone with your mom and you say, are you going to be home for spaghetti tonight? And I can make that sound like a fucking Rico.
That's the thing. That's my whole thing with conspiracy and like some of the words they use, because technically a lot of every person in America probably every day commits a federal crime they don't know they commit.
Every person in America?
So hear me out.
I jaywalked today.
So let's say you and him bet $100 that you'll beat him to the end of the street in a race.
Easy money.
He gives you the $100. Are you going to pay taxes on that?
No.
It's a federal crime. Technically.
Yes, I would. I'd pay taxes on that.
Technically.
Yeah, I just called my accountant now.
It's just, but you mentioned what you're talking about, like, you're dealing with the government. They could print money.
Yeah.
They literally have endless amounts of it. And then they do business with the worst people. Like Sammy the Bull Gravano is one of the most vile people.
Oh, let's talk about him.
Yeah. I've interviewed him. He's a vile creep. And even to today, this is a guy who's threatened me recently.
Oh, he came at you.
Yeah.
What did he say?
Yeah, I'd love to see if he could find. He basically said on camera that he would make me get on my knees and suck his, he hates me.
He would make you do that. Did you ask him how he would go about making you do that?
I did. He didn't respond, but he was very unhappy with me. But you look at him, like he's a vile fucking guy. Even like after the fact, he got 5 years for that John Gotti case.
Yeah.
Right.
Then he became like an ecstasy
Sold
dealer in Arizona.
Him and his kids. Yeah. And now he this is a guy who, and he doesn't talk about this on any of his interviews. He wouldn't even talk about it on my interview. He told me blatantly, do not ask me about this or I'll get off the show.
I'll fucking kill you.
There was a story. This is a true story. You can look it up. He killed a child, a 16-year-old child. This guy, Alan Kaiser, he was a kid.
When?
1978, I believe.
Not in the life.
No. He was just like a kid from the neighborhood. He had thought that this kid was a rival of like a biker group or something, and he killed him in cold blood. Killed him.
Where? Like what?
It was in Bensonhurst, Brooklyn.
How do we know this?
It's public knowledge. The FBI talked about it. They've talked about it in their thing. He's even talked about it.
So they knew that in their plea deal?
Oh, yeah. Of course.
A civilian.
And he's come out to the point where he doesn't even have the satisfaction to talk about it. He won't even say, I did it. He actually blames Louis Melito, his main guy.
Yeah, just for context, I think we said this a few minutes ago, but Gravano was the consigliere to John Gotti, ended up being the biggest rat in modern history for the mob, turned on John Gotti.
Yep, he was involved with 19 murders. Now, this is where Sammy, he didn't commit 19 murders. He really only committed 2 that I know of.
That's nice.
And he actually, what's crazy is they were Alan Kaiser, the kid, and this other guy was his first murder he ever committed. Other than that, he was ordering them. So he would say, hey, Julian, go take this guy out. Yeah. But he's still a really bad fucking guy.
Yes.
And he learned so much by his 5 years that he then started selling drugs to kids in Arizona. And now he makes a ton of money on YouTube talking about it. So it's... I asked John Gleason, the prosecutor for John Gotti. I asked him, why would you even do a deal with someone like this? Is this the kind
Gotti.
of... Say that again?
Because it's Gotti.
That's basically what he said.
That's all they
we
care.
didn't like... We hated John Gotti more than all them.
Yeah.
And he basically said to me, what Sammy did was bad, but the people that he cooperated against combined were way worse than Sammy. So we were willing to do a deal with him. And you look at all these people that cooperate. Most of them are bad fucking people.
Yeah,
they're not like some... I remember in Sopranos in one of the seasons, it was like... You remember that episode where Tony and Pussy... You've seen Sopranos, right?
Of course. I've seen it fucking a billion times.
Remember when Tony and Pussy whack the guy, Matt, that shoots at Christopher?
Out at the George Washington Slept Here house.
Slept Here house.
I used to live fucking a football
Hackleburny State Park, I think it's called.
I always drove by that. I'm like, that's where they did it.
Yeah. So if you remember in that episode, the witness was just this regular guy.
Yeah.
And the scene happens where his wife hears on TV that it's a mob associate connected. Yeah. And he's like, those cocksuckers. Because the cops didn't tell him who it was. But that's not the rats we're talking about here. These are not regular people. These are people that have committed a lot of them murders. And people say to me, why the fuck do you platform them then? And it's hard for me because I'm just trying to tell a history.
Yes.
And
I think that's different. I want to talk to Red about that because you are, to your point, you are trying to get to what happened here, and it's not about I'm condoning everything guy did.
I've taken some of these guys I've taken them to the cleaners some. I've asked them certain things. If you, Sammy says, Sammy the Bull will say, I cooperated against John Gotti because he was going to, basically fuck me in the end. He was going to make me take the rap for everything, which is probably true. So then why did Sammy testify against Vic Arena from the Colombo family? Yeah. Why did he testify against this person from the Bonanno family? It's
because once they got you, they say we don't get part of you. We get everything. All of you.
Right. I mean, you look at even Joe Massino, a boss. He was the first boss to ever testify.
Mm-hmm. What was that, 03, 06, something like that?
He was arrested in 03. 07, he got 7 death penalties. No, he's dead now.
No, I mean it's still in there.
Oh yeah, you do know a lot actually. But he had been convicted. He was facing the death penalty. He then, right when the trial's over, he calls the judge. I want to see the judge. He decides he wants to flip. They then send him back in to MDC with a wire on.
Yeah.
And he gets all sorts of incriminating information, including the boss at the time, Vinny Gorgeous.
Yeah,
saying
the hair guy.
Yeah, saying I want to whack the prosecutor. And I found a tape.
You found the tape?
Yeah, the tape.
Was it in the fucking dumpster?
No, I found it on where did I find
fucking
it?
with you, dude.
There's this terrific Reddit guy I know. I hate Reddit. Reddit's a fucking cesspool. That said, there's a guy I know on Reddit. His name is Joe Puzzles.
Joe Puzzles. That's
Shout out Joe Puzzles. This guy can get any wiretap. It's insane. Vinny Gorgeous, Joe Messino wiretap. I think I put it up on TikTok.
The Curious Case of Jeff Nadu.
There's so many. There's so many of me, but you hear the wiretap. It's fucking wild. Like it's clear. You can hear him. He's like, "You say you wanted to whack the prosecutor. What are we gonna get out of doing?"
Yeah.
And it's just like they had no problem just sending him in. Yeah.
Greg Andres.
Yes, there it is.
Right, hold on, let me
There
get
it
the
is.
volume, Alessi.
Yesterday, I had too much to do. I had a visit.
This
I had
is
to watch
Joe
my
Messino
calls,
talking
two
with
runs,
Vincent Basciano, Vinny Gorgeous.
How's Joe's? I seen all last night. What'd you think of that brief?
Great. I don't think it's good. I think it's great. They're doing the same thing to me.
I might be indicted again. Conspiracy to murder.
This prosecutor, I can't underestimate it because he's a dirty, rotten cunt. Okay?
Oh, he's making
No,
kill
I know
symbols,
that. I know
probably.
that. But you got to remember one thing, babe. Listen to me. I know you told me in the first time. I said, let me think about it. But I don't know who you told.
Nobody, man.
But I don't know that until just now.
So, Joe, you're my guy.
I understand.
I'm the best.
Do I know? Maybe you said something to Dominic?
Never.
Do I gotta ask?
Never.
Okay.
Never.
I gotta ask you.
I gotta be dope.
Remember? We spoke in full time.
Yeah.
I want to take the
Oh, he's leaning in.
No reason to lean. That's no good. That's a sore thing.
Forget about that.
We haven't talked about the prosecutor.
Right.
And I said, give me time to want to think about it. Let's spend more time up here. Think.
No.
We ain't gonna benefit.
No.
So
he
He's
basically
saying, let's
says
do it.
like, you remember you told me about doing that,
Yeah.
and you can see him. You can clearly hear he's leaning into him, trying to get him to say it, and like that ultimately.
He's like leaning in, like
Yeah.
a little louder.
Yeah. Like it's, and you look at what Joe Messina happened with him. This is a guy who, in his career, I mean, took out dozens of people. Sonny Black, the guy in Donnie Brasco.
Yeah.
He had Sonny Black killed, not because of Donnie Brasco. They'll tell you that.
Oh, it wasn't.
No.
I didn't know that.
Joe Messina talks about in his court testimony, he was fearful of Sonny Black as someone people respected, and he might take it from him someday, the boss title.
Did he get sanctioned to do that though? Or
He just did it.
He just did it
didn't
himself.
need sanctioned. Sonny was underneath him. There's a bunch of guys in the banana. I just did a video on a guy, Cesare Bonventre. He was this young Sicilian guy. A lot of people respected him. Joe killed him because of that as well. Joe was power hungry. But you look, he gets a deal. He gets out about 5 years later, early 2010s, declines witness protection. And this is something I had reported on. I had gotten in contact with someone in Messino's family. They had reached out to me after he died a few years ago. And they basically told me, I really respect how you covered my father's death, And they gave me information about where he was after the fact. And I was fascinated by where they put these people. Don't you think it's really interesting? Like we were talking about where we live, right? These areas, these mundane areas in society. And I had found that Joe Messina was placed in Cleveland, Ohio.
Oh, sorry to hear that.
Yeah. And he was given the name Ralph Rogers. That was his nickname, his real government name. And I'd asked the family member, I said, so like, where did he live? She said he lived in a 55 and over community. Like just your normal 55 and over. And I was like, what did he do all day? She's like, he went to church every day, which I found interesting. And I've learned a lot of like criminals, they're really religious. I guess they feel that like when the end comes, they'll be
Yeah, they
treated
rectify
better.
it to themselves, and then they
Yeah.
think they'll make it right.
And she said he loves the casino, and he likes going to TGI Fridays and Ruby Tuesday a lot. And there's no good Italian food, but he did find one place. And like he acted the same way. People thought it was weird that this like New York guy was out in Ohio. And like I was really fascinated by like they just put these people just in society.
Yeah.
They don't like, for instance, like they don't say it. Like if there's a chomo, right, living next door to you or near you, you can look that up, right? In Pennsylvania, we have Megan's Law, right? You can look it up. If a rat who was in the mafia and killed 20 people and was the boss of the violent crime family, he could hypothetically move in next door to you. You would never know.
I agree. I think it's crazy as well. Here's where you could make the logical argument, and this would really be a case-by-case basis, though. You'd have to do a real psychological evaluation, which is imperfect to say the least, to determine how much a guy has a switch versus doesn't, meaning like the switch is always on versus he can actually turn it off.
But Julian, here's what I've learned about the mob, okay? All these people. Even today, when you have a guy that does 20 years and was in the mob, the likelihood of him retiring and going to get a regular job is little to none.
What if the government's paying you, though?
Well, as a rat, yeah.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
But most of these guys reoffend, like Sammy.
Oh, yeah, 100%. Who was the fucking, what's his face's dad? Franchise's dad. He's fucking still going to prison when he was 100 years old.
Right.
Yeah, he would walk the yard with Raj up in prison.
He did more time in prison than virtually any gangster ever.
Never, always stood up, too.
And that's the thing about these guys. Like, they don't have a thing of, like, I'm just going to go get a regular job. It doesn't work like that.
But you're talking about the guys that get replaced somewhere once they've gone into Witsack. And it's like, the difference here, and again, some of them are straight. I mean, we can look at Gas Pipe Casso, not that he got put into Witsack, but guys like that are actually fucking full-blown. There's no saving them. They're Jeffrey Dahmer types, right? But you have a lot of other guys who are unquestionably bad guys.
We'll go back to...
But here's the thing. They signed up. This is the difference between having one of those guys sit across from me in the studio versus having some guy that killed his wife. The guy that killed his wife.
Yeah.
Right? This guy, now Sammy the Bull is a bad example because he killed a fucking civilian. But this guy sitting across from me, if he's a mobster, signed up for a life where everyone else who signed up for that knows the stakes. It's the can or the gun.
I agree with that. And I think in that term, but like if the house next door to you a murder happened in, they would tell you that when you buy it.
Yeah.
Like, I guess, like, I also relate it, too, to, like...
I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm straw manning it.
If you look at, like, you know, Roy DeMeo, right?
Yes.
Roy DeMeo is arguably the most depraved person ever connected to the mob, right? He was a part of the Gemini Lounge crew, and there were two people in that group, Joey Testa and Anthony Center, the Gemini twins.
They'd fucking cut you up like a... Yeah.
Do you know where they are today?
No.
Free.
Oh, they're free.
That's
a terrible example.
These are people that committed... Probably in an estimate,
they're Jeffrey Dahmer types.
They probably killed 30, 40, 50 people.
And they would literally dice bodies into 1,000 pieces. They got creative with it.
And they're living in society.
That's crazy.
And nobody knows who they are.
Agreed 100%. That's
like
crazy.
It's also like if you look into like Chapo, they're the Flores twins. You've heard of them. They were like two twins out of Chicago. They're just living in society.
Yeah, there's one who's coming on the show.
Okay, there you go. Yeah, he's done a lot. He's really interesting. I would love to. I could listen to him talk for hours, and that's like
he's a fan of my show.
That's dope. I'm a fan of him, but like, but Julian, think about what we're saying. He'll walk into this door right here.
Yeah,
this is a guy who was selling hundreds and hundreds of kilos a year.
Yes,
he was one of the most profitable people. For the most profitable drug cartel on the planet. Now, I get that he gave information. He was like a really valued source. I get that. It's just kind of wild that, and I don't think it is nothing illegal. It's just interesting. Like, you never, and that's why, as I get older, this is why when I'm in public, like, I'm totally different than the person you see on the internet. I will not act that way in public because you never fucking know who you're talking to.
You don't.
It could be some old ass man, fat guy, and you don't even know it could be Joe Messina.
Mm-hmm.
And I heard a story about Joe where someone supposedly recognized him in person. And he walked up and said, "Are you Joe Messina?" And he goes, "No, I don't know who that is." In his New York accent, "I don't know who that is." And it was him. But like, think about what you're like. That could like he could do anything to you. It's just kind of crazy that like people just walk up to him.
Yeah, to be clear, I want to be very clear. I agree with you. I'm straw manning it as how they may look at it back there, but it's a crazy system. Yeah.
Yeah. Like,
also, like, what are they gonna do though? Because the whole point is you're supposed to put them where they're not known, and that was the reward for them.
but you know what's
making
funny?
your case.
I've learned about like the FBI. They don't do that really.
They don't do what?
They usually put you like pretty close to where you're from. They give you the same like
Yeah,
generally
yeah.
like if your name's Joe in this like in the mob, they'll give you a name Joe something else.
Right.
Like a lot of them go to Florida. I know that.
Yeah.
Like most rats live in Florida or Arizona.
Uh-huh.
And what's crazy about Florida, because I know a bunch of these guys, they all live in the same community.
The villages?
Like similar, something not necessarily the villages, but like there might be
They're gonna
like
live next to you, Alessi.
there might be like a housing complex, and like there might be one here, and then down the street there's another, and they'll have barbecues together, and they sit there and they talk about, yo, remember in the '80s in Brooklyn, like they all live together. It's pretty interesting, actually.
He'll fucking take them to church. He'll get them on the right side of the law real fast, right?
Oh, that's a big thing for a lot of these guys. They all found God.
Yeah. He'll help them find them.
Yeah.
If they haven't.
But can a person? That's what I think about a lot. Can a person be, maybe not a mobster, but can a person be rehabilitated? Like, for instance, like a cartel person, right? You see like these videos where you got people cutting off people's legs. Like, how can someone see stuff like it's even like military people? How can you like do the things you do and then just come home and act like
you can't? You can't wipe the hard drive.
Yeah,
it's in there. I've talked with guys about this from all different angles of it, whether they be on the wrong side of law or if you want to call it the right side of law or whatever it may be. I was just talking with Andy Bustamante about this, who was covert spy forever and saw some horrible shit. It's like you can't get rid of that, and there's no way you can be okay. There was another guy we had in here actually that is insane.
You ever interview the Nick Irving?
Of course, the Reaper.
I think I watched your. Yeah, I think I was.
Yeah.
That guy, like.
Oh, you can see him seeing it.
Yeah.
Yep.
Like I love like I don't know how true the film is, but like that American Sniper movie.
Yeah, no, I know what you mean.
Like that movie, like it
shows it well.
Yeah.
Yes.
Like even that new movie, Warfare.
I haven't seen it.
I haven't seen it either. But the opening scene, have you seen the opening scene?
No.
It went viral. I posted it. It went viral.
Yeah.
It's like these movies, they make you feel like remember, these are just regular people from America, right? And they just are trained for like a period of time, and they're just thrown in a foreign country and say, fight.
Go. Yeah.
Just, go. And like they turn into like a guy like Nick Irving, right? Who has these like, and then you just say, okay, it's over. Go home and have a good life.
You and I can't understand it because we never did it. And a movie can give you an idea, but we still have that suspension of belief where we know it's a movie. Even if we know it happened, these are actors, that's fucking ketchup being sprayed there is fucking crazy. They made it look real, but you know it's not.
Yeah.
But there's a thing that happens. I've been doing this long enough with enough guys from all different walks of life where you can see it behind their eyes. You can see like the lights either go on or off depending on what the situation is, where like they're there. And like I'm in this enclosed studio with them and they go there. And Nick Irving's one of them that did that. But I had this guy in here who maybe you should talk to because it's in your wheelhouse. This guy, Matthew Hedger, for 275 and 290, who I could do this for the rest of my career and I may never get a chance to sit down with a dude like him. He was what's called a knock. You ever hear this? Mm-hmm. So non-official cover for people out there. That means they are completely deniable to the U.S. government. It's like the highest level spy there is. They're totally off books. If they get caught in another country, not only does the U.S. government not do anything about it, they encourage the other country they might encourage them to be like, yeah, do whatever you want with them. So Matt Hedger was in the last, decade of his career, he infiltrated the cartels. And
I saw that. He had a suit on. I saw that guy.
And so he went deep into the cartels and became one of their chief money launderers. And he did things like It was crazy. I had Ed Calderon sitting here a week after him talking about, are we going to talk about the CIA flipping guys high level at top 5, top 10 banks to, launder for the cartels? And I'm like, funny you say that. I had that guy here last week who literally did that and told the story. But there's one story of the many that Matt tells that it's just like, holy shit, where he talks about it was in 275. He talked about this. But he was taken to this warehouse when he was with the cartels. And mind you, he's a money laundering guy. He's not carrying the gun around or doing any of that shit. But he's around these guys, the highest level guys. And in this warehouse, there's a dude tied up on the floor, crying and begging and beat up. And on the table in the middle is like an 8 or 9-year-old boy. And it's the guy's son. Now, this guy had allegedly stolen money from the cartel, and it's all, I don't remember how many people it was, maybe it was 25 cartel guys. They're all around the dude, and Matt walks up, and he's got to stand there and pretend this is normal. And they all took their turns taking a carrot peeler to the kid's face while he's screaming, and his dad's screaming just as much. And you can see, Matt's trained to internalize emotions, so he's still doing that when he's in the studio with me. But you can just see behind the eyes, whatever the fuck is going on there is just burning.
Well, I think, though, and I've looked into this with, one of the next things I'm going to get into with organized crime is the real mafia, the Camorra, the Ndrangheta, the Sicilian mafia. Yeah. And one of the big phenomenons in Naples right now are baby bosses, these gangs. Baby gangs, yeah. Essentially 12 to 20-year-old kids that get into the rackets and become bosses of groups, small groups. And I saw a documentary recently, I think it was maybe Vice. It was actually really well done, where they profiled 4 kids that were from these projects, basically. They're called The Sales in Naples. If you've ever seen the show Gomorrah, greatest television show of all time.
Yeah, it's good stuff.
They profile this place, and they interview the kids, and these are young kids, 13, 14 years old, talking about killing people, doing bad things to people. And they interviewed essentially a superior, a guy maybe he's in his 20s. And they say to him, like, why do you make these kids do this type of stuff? Like, why aren't you doing it? And he says, essentially, we need to take any humanity they have and remove it from them. Yeah. Because in this world, that's not useful to them, really.
We can't play this, Alessi, sorry. But go ahead, Jeff.
He basically says, like, what they have, like the ethics that they have or they were born with, we want to remove that from them because that's not useful to what we do. And she then asks, what happens if they don't kill? We kill them.
Yep.
They do what we say. Yep. We're the judge, jury, and executioner in these countries. And that's what I'm sure he'll tell you. They probably, in a way, wanted him to see that. Because this is what happens when you don't do what we say.
That's 100% right.
And I think that's why cartels are so powerful, because they are so good. And even you look at ISIS, they are so good at propaganda, where they'll put so much, not even money. They'll just take a phone out and record something, and they'll put it out. The reason those cartel executions are put out is really to just not only scare people, but to also say, we're the people here. You fuck with us, this will happen to you. And if you actually listen to the interrogations, they say the same shit always. Yeah. This person did this, and this will be the fate if you do it. So don't fucking do it.
Yeah. There's a thing I think about often where it's like you don't empathize the act. And I'll explain this, but try to learn to empathize how this could have gotten to this point. And what I mean is, let's look at the worst type of example. You see a terrorist blow up 1,000 people. It's a horrible person. Going straight to fucking hell. At some point, though, that person was a 5-year-old kid. And I like to look at, I don't know if like's the right word, but I try to make myself look at where they came from and what might have clicked. Like, what made baby Hitler, right? Well, because how can we avoid having that in the future?
That's why I started the show that I have. Because I'd watched The Irishman, that film. Mm-hmm. And I think the last half hour of it is a masterpiece.
Yeah.
Because we see a man who his whole life was celebrated. He was with all these famous mob guys, and he was getting this beautiful ring that nobody had, and he was the chief of this union. And he was very powerful with Jimmy Hoffa. Mm-hmm. And in the end, he realized he was an old man dying. and he'd ostracized everybody.
He had nothing.
And he had nothing in the end, and he died alone by himself, didn't even know it was Christmas. And I started that, and I thought about also what you just said. What makes a person, like what makes someone, what is so powerful about that code?
Yeah.
That you go in a room and you take the saint, you burn it. What's so powerful where you will leave your dying wife to go kill someone for a group of men? What's so powerful about that? What's so powerful about, you know, being a member of a cartel? Or you look at, you know, terrorists.
It's power.
Till the time they die, they feel like they're doing something very righteous.
Yes.
And in where they're from, it is righteous. I interviewed a guy about 2 weeks ago. Out of all the people I'll talk about today, this person you should have on your show more than any of them because he is incredibly interesting. This guy, Eric King, he was involved in the Ferguson riots with Michael, or what was his name? Michael Brown.
2014.
Yeah. He was involved with throwing a Molotov cocktail into a government office. And he got 10 years. And he continued to be an activist in prison, which is, you don't want to do that. You don't want to piss off the government.
Yeah.
Eventually he got into a fight with a guard and they sent him to the ADX. And he was in the ADX for almost 3 years. And you know what he told me? He met Richard Reed, the shoe bomber.
Yeah.
And the way and I almost felt, when I was interviewing, I almost felt like, I don't even know how to respond to this. Where he said at one point, he said, I looked at Richard Reed as the Richard Reed from London that wasn't a terrorist. Because outside of that, he was a really nice guy. He told me he's like the nicest guy I've ever met. And we talked about this and we talked about that. And he humanized this guy.
Yes.
Which is weird because like when we hear terrorists, we don't humanize them. And in a way, they were all just a 5-year-old kid, just like you said.
Yes.
And I think in terms of like terrorists, we know why they become the way they are because it's all religiously based. But why does John Wayne Gacy, what makes him do that? And that's something that I've always searched for. And I think a lot of people that like true crime, they also search for it. Like, what is it about this? Why do they become this way? What goes off in their brain? And I think a lot of them we find out. And if you look into some of their history, I think a lot of it just comes from, you know, like if you look into Whitey Bulger, you know, a lot of the MK Ultra stuff that went on, I think a lot of people wonder, did that have some effect on it? And a lot of the stuff that went on in World War II, a lot of those people that happened to, the kids they had are the people we're talking about here. That 70s, 80s, where there was a lot of these serial killers and bad people. Did it have something to do with that maybe?
Yeah, that's an interesting argument for sure. And it's like, you talk about the humanizing point though. That's the thing. It's like someone can just be off 1% of the time, and that's all it is because they're fucking Jack the Ripper when they're off. But that other 99%, they're like your fucking grandfather down the street. It's very strange.
You know, I'll tell you something. I've talked about this publicly once, and I'll tell you it here because I think it's a worthy place to talk about it. So, as you know, my dad died in 2023, and last year I dealt with a situation. I was having some problems, and just grief had really overcome for me. I was fucking super stressed out. There was a lot going on, and I went to a facility for 5 days. It was like a behavioral place. And I remember I didn't initially know I was going there, but I guess they had said, essentially what had happened is I had come in contact with the police locally about a matter I was dealing with. And cop says to me, because I just don't think they wanted to deal with me, they said, you want to go to the hospital? And I said, I wasn't feeling right. And I said, you know what? I'll go. I'll get my vitals checked, make sure I'm okay. So I go and they take me to the psych ward because I'd mentioned I was a mob content creator. I made videos about the Mafia. So I think they had heard that and they thought, what the fuck is this guy talking about?
Aisle 5.
Yeah. Like what is this guy talking about? So they take me to the psych ward and I didn't really know where I was. I just kind of answered their questions and, you know, I'm there 6 hours and I'm like, I got to go home. Like I got stuff to do tomorrow. So I go out to the lobby and I said, can I leave? And she's like, no, you can't leave. I said, so what do I do? She goes, go in there and sit in there and we'll tell you when you can leave. And I'd made a comment. I said, you better make sure I get out of here. And they took that as a threat. Long story short, they take me to this place the next day. And I go in and I realized at that point I wasn't going home because I know what the rules are on a 302 patient in Pennsylvania. You have to stay there for at least 72 hours. And this was on a Saturday, so nobody's working. So I figured until Monday, no one's even talked to me. So I go in, and I learned that this place has 6 units. Elderly, adolescents, co-ed, all this place. They take me to the Section 300, which I didn't know what Section 300 was, but I in turn find out that it is the place where the criminals go. The criminally insane go. I sit in the bed, and they introduce me to the guy next to me. He's on medication. He doesn't even know his name probably. I remember walking out to the common area, and I thought to myself, and I'm fine by this point, I'm thinking like, where the fuck am I? What is going on? And I hear people screaming, and I hear people like just saying the most insane shit. And you know, longer story short, I ended up staying there for a certain amount of time, and they signed me out because I was completely fine. And I think in term was a big misunderstanding. They had thought I said I was in the Mafia and, you know, as a hitman and stuff. And obviously I wasn't. I remember the psychiatrist says to me, Julian, she says, she comes in Monday, she goes, I've never done this before, but I Googled you. I said, oh yeah, what'd you find? She goes, you're a pretty interesting guy. I said, yeah. She goes, you talk about the Mafia?
Yeah.
I said, yeah, I have a podcast. She goes, I think this is a misunderstanding that happened here. She goes, are you suicidal? I said, no. You know, are you homicidal? I said, no. Are you on medication? No. Do you want medication? No. She goes, if you want to sign yourself out, you can.
Just like that.
Yeah. And then she goes, there's one caveat. I'm thinking I'm going to leave. I'm thinking, sweet, I'll be home by Monday night, you know, whatever. She goes, in Pennsylvania, when you sign yourself out, 72 hours you got to stay. So I'm sitting in a place where I have no phone. It was jail. You couldn't leave the unit. It was worse than jail.
It's a strange purgatory.
It really is. And I remember I said to myself, I didn't know what I was going to do. It was so boring. I thought, you know what? I'm going to just do the programs. Maybe I'll speak to the chaplain, try to learn some stuff about stress. And I'm going on 2 years since I went to that. There's not a day that I wake up I don't think about that place. Like in the things that I learned there and like just.
Like in a positive way. Yes.
And like the people that I met there. And it goes back to like what you were talking about with why people become the way they are. I think I found out that a lot of people just have mental illness. Like, yeah. And it's not pronounced. Most people, you'll never have it come across until something bad happens, something that puts them into a bad place happens. They lose a job, they lose a girlfriend or boyfriend, they lose a family member. Then it may persist and get kind of bad. Some people take it and they go to a whole nother place where they realize that life has been lost to them. They don't live for anything anymore. I'm going to just do what I got to do. Yeah. I'm going to get known some way.
Right.
And that's what I've learned with a lot of these. Like, if you look into like school shooters, a lot of the reason in rhetoric they do what they do is just to get known.
Yeah.
If you read in like Klebold and Harris, the Columbine shooters.
Oh, yeah.
They talk about that. They like really wanted to be known for what they did. They wanted a legacy. That's what they talked about in their manifesto.
I said it a little bit ago when you were starting to get into some of this stuff. I said it comes back to one word. It's power.
Yeah.
People want to take back power in their life. You look at the terrorists, you look at the serial killer, you look at the school shooter, you look at the person that decides they're going to join the cartel because they're a part of something, join the mob because they're a part of something. They want to, even if it's an organization like that, they want to feel like they're a part of something where they are above other people because for whatever reason they've been below other people.
It's so interesting because there are certain guys like that I've researched that are terrorists. They're homegrown, like ones that lived here or Canada or Russia or something. And you'll find that a lot of them were neo-Nazis before they became Islamic. It's weird. But you'll find that they just want to be a part of something.
Yes.
And but that's I think the biggest thing about what you said. Like I think a lot of people struggle with mental illness. And I think maybe outside of the drug war, I think mental illness is probably the biggest problem. And what's really sad is like a lot of the people that were in that place, I ended up getting moved out of the criminal area. They moved me into the co-ed dorm, which was great because it was way better than the other. But I learned that the 32 people in my unit, all of them were on medication but me. They're all on antidepressants.
Lithium, all that shit that zonks you.
And then I see that, like, the one good thing about this place, you know what it was? The food. It was insane. If I could eat lunch there every day, I would. It was
it's that good.
Yeah. And I remember sitting there and I just spent a lot of the time observing people. And all the people, they had heaping plates of food 3 times a day. They're all overweight. They're all just depressed. And I'm thinking, like, maybe it's the food that they're eating. They just feel like shit all the time. And they're on medication that they maybe don't even need to be on. And I learned quickly at that place that, like, once you say, I'm not taking medication, they don't care anymore about you. You want to sign yourself out, go ahead. As long as you're not on insurance.
That's the cheat code.
I was a self-payer at the time. Self-pay means I didn't have insurance at the time. So they realized that they're not going to be able to, they can milk you for 2 weeks on insurance because insurance pays.
Right.
Throwing the medication, they're making a ton of money.
Yeah.
I told them from the beginning, I don't need it. I'm not taking medication ever. And as soon as I said that, the whole tenor changed.
Yeah.
Oh, Jeff, you're fine. You want to sign yourself out? Go ahead.
Get the fuck out.
Yeah. And they didn't bother with me. If I didn't go to the groups, they didn't care. Like, they just get that bed freed up, bring somebody else in.
But this was right after your dad died. So, do you think it's pretty hard to be normal after something like that? Like, your mind's fucking with you.
And I've talked about, like, I was dealing with some personal stuff I remember that week I was getting a lot of phone calls and people were they wouldn't answer. They would just hang up. And I just felt like something was wrong. Like, maybe I was a little paranoid, but I don't know, something came over me. And I do think that night I probably should have went to that place. But what I learned is there's a lot of people that struggle with that kind of thing. And some of it, it's just very simple. They may go to a place like that and be fine. You'll never see it again. And then some just act like that kid that did the Mangione, that kid. He thought he could get on the front page of the paper and maybe make a change. And if he's going to take that, I'll do it. He definitely, no normal person does stuff like that. Normal people don't decide, hey, I'm just going to go to New York and take out a CEO. Like,
no, something crack there.
It doesn't work like that. So I don't know. I think all of it's just really interesting. And, the mob just kind of was the thing that worked for me. But, I think I've learned that just in crime, there's just so many more interesting things too about it. Because the mob now is totally different, but it's this other groups that are way more interesting to me.
You said your dad's the one that got you into all this stuff too?
Yeah, I think in a weird way. Like, I remember when I was real young, 9, 10 years old, kind of the way you were talking about with A&E. I remember my dad at night would watch TV in his own room. He would watch, like, the History Channel and stuff. And I remember those biographies would be on, John Gotti or Al Capone. And that was my first kind of interest in it. But I was always a kid that, like, I never played with, like, toys and stuff. Like, I was watching the Weather Channel and, like, reading and stuff. And I loved history. When I was a kid, I was a big history guy. I loved watching films about war and things of that nature. And I remember maybe 15, I bought the Gotti film, HBO version.
Oh, yeah.
Armand Asante.
Yeah.
And I had it on DVD, and I would watch it all the time. And I think early, and this is one thing, I actually referenced this when my father died. I spoke at his funeral, and I talked about, out of the 3, I have 2 siblings, and out of 3 kids, I was always enthralled by bad people, like villains. I didn't grow up in the hood. I wasn't a bad guy.
Did you root for the villains in the movie?
Always. And I remember particularly, I got that Gotti film, and I watched it. I thought, just John Gotti, he's so cool. He's the coolest guy in the world. He's like regal. I'd watch these videos of him running down the street. They're cheering him on. And I thought, this guy's amazing. I remember at the same FYE that I bought the documentary, or the film, they had a poster of John Gotti.
Yeah.
And I brazenly hung it on my front door to my bedroom. and you got to know, my dad was one of 15. Okay.
15 kids?
Yes.
Holy shit.
He did not go to 8th grade. He started working for $4 an hour as a laborer for a mason. 15. He built, a very big company. So worked, hardest work you'll know. Greatest guy you'll ever know. And I remember, and I remember referencing this. I remember he came home, and I always remember my dad, because I don't know if you know when your dad, but when he'd run up the steps, you would hear his legs like crack. I don't know if you ever remember that.
Legs cracking?
Yeah, like you hear.
I hear feet stomping.
No, like when you when you're running up the stairs, like maybe not everybody does it, but
Yeah.
I would hear my dad. I would always know
Yeah,
it
you
was
should
him.
see. You should see a doctor for that.
No, it sounded just like any guy, I guess.
Okay.
I don't know, but I remember he knocks on my door. He goes, "What's up with that poster?" He goes, "John Gotti." He goes, "You know he's bad, right? Bad guy." I said, "Nah, he's cool." I said, "Dad, we watch him."
Teflon Don.
Yeah, I said we watch him on TV. Like,
Yeah.
you know, he told the government to F themselves. He goes, and I think he tried to get through to me, and he tried to get through to me my whole life. And I think I only realized it when I started covering these people that they're all really bad people.
Oh yeah.
And I think back, and I wish, like, if only I'd have listened. Like, you know, he was the hero, you know, in the end for me. You know.
Yeah,
Like,
but you know what though? You're a kid. You don't know better. And like you said, then you learn about it.
Yeah.
And you figure it out. Sometimes it just takes that time to do it. Obviously your dad knew.
Yeah.
But, you know.
But I think he probably at the time was like, why is that his hero? You know?
Right.
Like, but I didn't know. I didn't know who John Gotti
There's
was.
something, but there's a difference between rooting for the Joker and Batman and rooting for John Gotti in a movie about John Gotti, right? One is like the fuck you vigilante that, you know, kind of seems like he could be a Robin Hood and is larger than life, that being like John Gotti, even though he's not, right? The other is like, oh, this is a sadistic psycho who's killing people, right?
Sure.
There's a difference. But then there are people who do root for the Joker. They do root for Jeffrey Dahmer in the movie. And it's like, ooh.
Yeah.
Something's off there.
And that is a bit of probably a mental illness, maybe.
Yeah.
I mean, but I guess I'll just say this. The mental illness problem is...
Oh, it's rampant.
I mean, you think about, you walk down the street, how many people you run into that are struggling with something.
Every day.
And again, most of them will be fine, but we're just throwing medication at the problem. And it's like, in a way, it's probably making them worse. So
It's a subscription model.
yes.
Yeah.
Yes. That's a big business. So
Yeah. Real fast, Jeff, I just got to run to the bathroom, but we got to come back and talk about that 764
yeah, let's do
shit.
it. Let's do it.
All right, we're back. So you had hit me up about this new cult you've been looking into a bunch that I've never heard of. That it sounds sinister as
Yeah,
fuck.
I don't think a lot of people know much about them. I mean, but I think in terms of like organized crime now, like this is, I think, where we are, like outside of getting away from like drug trafficking and stuff like that, where we have these like organized extortion groups where, and there's
What's the name of this group again?
this group's called 764. Okay, and it's really not just one group. It's all sorts of different groups. And they're basically based on Discord and other social media. And I want to reference, and I don't know if you could ever get this girl on your show, but there's a woman on Twitter. She's an investigative journalist. I'll have to give your info. Her name is BX. She's done some incredible reporting on this group to the point of like she's been threatened by them. It's been pretty bad. And essentially what it is it's a collective of chomos, bad people who target kids from communities on Discord, Roblox, and like maybe bulimic Discord groups, and like just kind of marginalized kids that are struggling maybe emotionally or mentally, and they kind of chummy up to them, try to be their friend, you know, whether it's a friend or a love interest. Maybe they get them to send them a photo of themselves, tell them their name, where they're from. They then progress to grooming them, essentially, to send them photos of themselves.
Jesus Christ.
Whether it's...
They're doing this on Discord.
Yes. Whether it's naked or whatever, they'll then do it, and that's when they have them. And they'll basically use this to extort them. And they'll say, like... And they're all... A lot of them have become, like, very powerful in terms of they're doing this to so many people that the other kids in the group are looking up to the kids that are doing this. And you almost have to earn your way up to the top to do this. So what they'll do is they'll get like some young girl and they'll say, and this has been documented, you can look this up, bite off your hamster's head on camera. And if you don't do it, we'll put your pictures out there. And I'm finding that like it's way more than that. Like they'll have people carve stuff into their skin, mutilate themselves, light themselves on fire, kill people on camera.
Kill people on camera.
Yeah, there's a case out of Romania. There was a kid that was involved with 764 where he was on a Discord call. It's recorded. He's on a Discord call where he's talking to a kid and he says, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. And you see in the distance, there's a little old lady. She's like taking her garbage out. He's like, I'm going to do it. And he goes, show me.
Oh, it's a video call.
Yeah, it's a video Discord call. And the guy's like, show me. So he shows him and he walks up to the lady, sprays her with like pepper spray, and she falls down and just starts kicking her in the head. And then he slashes her throat and he like walks off and he's like laughing and like he loves it. And they found out that he was part of 764 and he was this pedophile basically that was wanted by Interpol. He was like 15 years old. And basically was part of this group. And what this BX has uncovered is that 764 is kind of a faction, like a small faction on the internet of an accelerationist group of people. And I don't know if you're familiar with accelerationism, but it's basically people that want to cause chaos in the world to unravel the social order. They don't believe in, they believe in primitive like ways of life where there's no government and there's no anything. And these are people that are, a lot of them are based out of Ukraine and Russia and places like that. And they're largely from like neo-Nazi backgrounds or like hooliganism, where they believe in no order and they're going to do what they have to do to upset social order. And if you look recently into some of the recent either school shootings or there was even a case, and your guy can bring it up, out of Wisconsin, of a guy, Nikita Kasip. He was arrested 2 weeks ago. He killed his parents. And their FBI released documents that he was in contact with a person from a group called MKU, Maniac Murder Cult, they're called. And they're basically this acceleration group. And he was going to flee to Russia, and his goal was to kill the president. And their goal is they come across, and some of them are really high level.
Kill the president here.
Yes. And some of them, like what they try to do is they search Discord with like 764 people, and they try to groom them into becoming higher level operatives in a way.
Oh my God.
And the FBI is starting to take notice of this and putting out documentation of like press releases that if you're a person with a child in America, you need to look at what and who your kids are talking to.
It's terrifying, man.
And the Fifth Estate, they're out of Canada. The Fifth Estate, they're a documentary channel. They do documentaries on all sorts of things. They did a fantastic documentary on 764, and they interviewed a girl who, like, her mother went to the Royal Mounted Police, and they didn't even know what this group was. They were like you. They didn't even know who they were. And they just, like, chalked it up as, like, pranks and shit. And what we have found is, like, Discord is a haven for this kind of stuff. And the guy that created 764 is this guy, Bradley Cadenhead.
You said he was like 14 when he created it?
He was like 15 years old.
Yeah, can you pull this kid up, Bradley Cadenhead?
Out of Texas.
He looks like Charles Manson's kid.
Yeah.
If he had one.
He was probably, like, I've looked in a lot of bad people. This guy might be one of the worst people I've ever come across.
Look at the second picture, Alessi.
Yeah.
He was given 80 years or something.
Yeah. Yeah, his name, he went by Felix. That was his code name. But like some of like Wired and Washington Post and Der Spiegel, they've done some documentation on this group. And like if you read into some of the press releases, like what these people do, it's pretty unbelievable.
What was he doing?
I mean, there's a call where he talks about like he loved CP, like he's obsessed with it, and like he would get people. I think he actually got the girl to bite off her hamster's head. I think, like
Kid.
Yeah, and like a lot of these people, and what's scary about it, bro, is like a lot of this is like people from Brazil, people from Romania, other countries, and I would just urge people to like look into this group. They're real. This is not fake. Over the last year, we've seen dozens of people get indicted by the feds and given long prison sentences because a lot of these people are engaging in, CSAM, which is, this is a really good, Washington Post did a really good piece on it. They're engaged in like child sex abuse material. This is another one.
What do you think this is? Do you think this is, obviously we're seeing kids like Bradley are potentially pawns on the board here who are doing the bidding of what the community
Yeah, that's
kind
what
of
they call it. The
makes
com.
them to become. But do you think this is like an op? You think these are other governments trying to fuck with different people around the world?
I think 764 people like this, they're mostly just like young people that are just trying to.
Let me re-ask that question.
Yeah.
I'm not saying the young people aren't doing these things and aren't fucked up.
Yeah.
I fully believe that. I don't think that's an op. I think maybe they're being, because the internet allows you to scan the whole world to basically create a magnet to find whatever you want for the best or worst ways. Do you think it could be like some sort of fucking magnet that some government's doing
to
sow like chaos?
I mean, Discord as a whole is
a disaster.
I'm really surprised that Discord's still allowed to be operational in America. I mean, and it's not just stuff like this. I mean, there's some screwed up shit on Discord. I mean, everything from like some of the weird sexual communities, you know, like it's just, and there are YouTubers that do really good work on like the dark sides of Discord, but it could be. I mean, I think it'd be a weird sop. Would it surprise me if, you know, like a Russia was involved? Probably not. What's weird is a lot of the people from that maniac murder cult, which these are people that are essentially terrorists. These are people that, like the guy that was running maniac murder cult, he was arrested a year or two ago. He got talking to an undercover FBI agent who he was trying to get him to go to Times Square and hand out poison laced candy to kids, like as like a large scale terrorist attack.
The FBI agent was trying to get him.
No, the guy was undercover. He was talking to this leader. The guy was undercover. He was trying to get the undercover to do this. He didn't know it was an undercover. Yeah. So they're trying to do these like events that, and if you look into some of the mass shootings recently, there was one out of Nashville. There are some connections between those people and kind of this belief. So again, it's not like my main area of something I'm focused on. I've just read into it recently, and I've read some of her reporting and I've watched some of the documentaries on it. And it seems like the FBI is finally starting to take it seriously. But, you know, I would say if you have a kid out there, maybe they're struggling with some things, make sure you're looking into their phone, because these people are ruthless.
It's very scary, the idea. I'm not a parent yet, but, you know, bringing a kid up in the world now, like you can't be a fucking helicopter with your kid because that's going to make them worse. But, you know, especially with this, having access to this at a young age, kids are smart, man. They figure shit out, and then then they're dumb, right? They don't figure out what they're figuring out, and they get themselves into weird situations. It's very scary.
And you can only parent so much.
That's right.
You can only be, like you said, you can't be completely over top on your kid because they're going to want to go out and do things. I think as long as you instill the right values, generally the kid will be all right. But nowadays, again, I didn't grow up during that time where like Discord wasn't around when I was 12 years old, you know?
Yeah.
The internet really wasn't around up until I was like a teenager.
This.
So
yeah,
it's definitely scary, man. I mean, it's a scary world out there. And, you know, these are the new ways that, and again, luckily the FBI is starting to crack down on these people and make it really bad for them. But I would urge you even to take a look at the rabbit hole of that. You know,
Did you find out about this from BX, you were saying? Is that where you first
No, I
found
out. So I found this out through the best channel I've ever come across on YouTube is a channel called Disturb Reality. I've talked to him. I've interviewed him. He is the best creator I've ever seen on this type of content.
Reality. I want to see.
Yeah, it's the first one.
Okay, first one.
He essentially covers disturbing content on video, and he talks about everything from cartel executions to viral videos. I don't know if you know, but there's a weird community on the internet of people that are interested in gore.
Oh yeah, we've talked about it before.
And
that's like even the Run the Gauntlet shit, right, Alessi?
Yeah, so everything from like rotten.com, that stuff years ago. But there's a subset of like these videos, and he basically watches them so you don't have to. And he not only includes what happens, but he tells a backstory. And he's actually, if you like cartel history, he's actually really good.
Yeah, I haven't seen this channel before. I want to
check it out, but he's done some
this guy.
He's done some videos on 764. He did a video about some of the stuff they were up to. And he actually covered the Romanian murder. He did a video, and that's where I had gotten it on my wavelength. And I started looking into them, and I realized like this is organized crime at this point. This is a group of people who are kind of governing a certain way of doing things, and they're picking on people really. Yeah. And it's sad because like there are a lot of situations that I found that people are actually offing themselves
it's horrible.
On behalf of this group.
And they feel like they, you know, and this is the first I'm hearing about this group, but this phenomenon you're talking about where people, you know, get involved in shit online and then feel like they have no way out and off themselves. It's like they're afraid to talk. That's the other sad reality here. They're like, when it's kids, they're afraid to talk to their parents about it and bring them in because, you know, they're like their parents.
They think they're doing something wrong.
Yeah, they'll be disappointed. So it would be easier on my parents. Like that's where they get themselves. I'll just do this. And it's so...
Well, I think
fucking tragic.
I think this is the sad like denouement that we're in because of like coronavirus, right? Mm-hmm. Like I think a lot of this stuff was introduced with that, where like kids just had like essentially a year where they were able to well, we had nothing to do, and the people like this, like they're opportunists, they're leeches, and they're going to prey on weak people. And that's the sad part is they're going after weak people.
Yes.
Most of the people involved in doing this, like you just said, are kids. They're other kids doing this. And most of them are LARPers. They're mostly just like jerk-offs, like, you know, with no social standing. Right. They're incels, like, and they feel in a world, like the biggest losers in the world are Reddit moderators, right? Like they're just like goofy, like LARPers who have no power in the world. They do nothing in life, and that's their job. And we see on Discord, it's the same way. It's just these goofy people that have no power in the world, and this is the only power they own. And they then take it and they turn it inward, and they just bully people, you know? I'm blown away Discord still's a lot around. Like I thought it would have been gone by now.
I think I was telling you off camera, it's like the 4chan of COVID.
Yeah.
You know, but what you say about...
And look into 4chan and how connected 4chan is to... school shootings to all this stuff.
Yeah.
You know, there's
a lot of people that use it.
And it all goes back to the one insular moment, Columbine. Every shooter references that. And when they, in their manifesto said, we want this to be bigger than Oklahoma City and all this other stuff, it has been. Outside of September 11th, it is the most insularly bad moment this country has seen in 25 years.
Yeah. No, it's and
because it's ushered in,
created a movement.
Yep, and it's ushered in social rejects that worship it and then act it out.
And you made a great point a little bit ago where you were talking about the profile of these kids. It's always all the same. It's always the same.
Yep.
You know,
it's kids who feel, you know, and look, there are a lot of kids that are bullied. We were all bullied at one point, but we're seeing now it's a lot of them are just like. There are a lot of bad ones now, a lot of bad kids that are neo-Nazi views or like, and you wonder like, how does this go in someone's house and you don't know? Like if you're, I mean, you really don't know what the kid's doing behind that black thing at the back. So
you see what those algorithms do, man, regardless of what platform you're on. Could be everything from fucking Instagram to YouTube to 4chan.
And like, I will also say like, and I'm sure this creator will tell you the same thing. I've seen every video on the surface web, probably that's bad that you can see. And like, I know after a while, like I watch a cartel execution video or two and I'm like, I got to stop watching this.
Yeah.
And like, you think about these young kids, they sit there and watch this shit all day. They then sit and they play a game that's so real that, you know, how can you not play it and think it's real after a while? And you begin to realize like, maybe this is part of my life and this is me.
That's right.
And that's why, like, I remember when they blamed video games on this stuff and people are like, oh, you can't blame music or video games. And it's like, I hate to tell you, you can. You definitely can.
It gets weird because you have to, especially living in America, you got to have a free market, which is a free market of ideas and a free market of people being able to make decisions. It gets very strange when those decisions involve kids, and that's where you have to put the onus on parents, but then parents aren't around, and is that their fault? And then the kids make decisions, and
they got around that because they put that remember that thing on video games? It was for 18 and older.
Oh, yeah.
But they never
Right,
cared,
yeah. It's just a lawyer figured that out.
And people
somewhere.
thought like, oh, if we put this on, like, I'm sure the people at the store won't sell it. It's like,
yeah, it is definitely affecting our kids. And then you add in like COVID to me, that period was, I guess you could say intentionally or unintentionally, depending on what actually fucking happened there. It was the worst type of Trojan horse because it put people in this, all right, we're all going to band together by going inside and going away from shit. And then, by the way, this is going to last a lot longer, so you're going to get used to it. You're going to get used to the comfort of not, going past your fucking family room and not having a purpose other than to play video games.
and you
fuck
have
around.
to do it.
And you have to do
There's
it.
no other choice. And
That's right.
everybody's going to do it, so it'll be fine.
Yeah.
And everybody massively goes to the computer. And before you know it, these communities pop up. And I just wonder what will happen next, because it just all evolves and gets worse and worse, a lot of this stuff. But luckily, like I said, the FBI is starting to look into it a little bit. And, hopefully they're bringing awareness to people. And like I said, if you have kids, just... You see that Discord thing, you better look through that.
Oh, fuck yeah.
It'll come across very innocent. It'll be like, hey, I was a bulimic once. Do you need help?
All the high-level government people that I talk with, every single one, their kids do not have phones.
I was always curious about, like, I don't have kids. And you said you don't either. I mean, I didn't get a phone till I was 15.
Yeah,
probably.
same.
I mean, and I think I ended up getting it myself. I just wanted one, so I went out and got a prepaid. But like it wasn't.
I gotta get the lines checked.
Yeah, it wasn't like it is now, where like you'll see like 4 or 5-year-old kids. Yeah. They have phones. It's
It's crazy.
What does a 4-year-old need a phone for?
Oh, again, those same people I just talked about. When you start asking them about it, they get grim.
Well, that's the thing.
Talk about those examples, like you have no idea what you're doing.
I was talking to my mother about that because, like we have like nieces and nephews and stuff that are younger, and like if you take like the iPad away, they like start crying.
Yeah,
and like the parents will say like, I just give it to them, and it's almost like a way to parent actually at this point, where like you don't want to hear them, so you just give them the iPad, and it's like what you're doing is you doing that day after day for years on end. Kid turns into a robot, and it's like, what did we do wrong? When I was a kid, we, like, you're same age, we played outside, we colored, we, did stuff with our parents, we went to amusement parks. Like, nowadays, you're away for summer break, you're playing this game and that game and Fortnite and all this other stupid stuff. Now, I'm not saying I never played video games. Of course you did. But that was before we went out and played outside,
Yeah, my mom used to have a line from the pre-iPhone era when I was a kid where she's like, you can't let the TV be a babysitter.
Yep. Well, nowadays,
forget a TV. You got the phone, you got the iPad, there's screens on everything. Everything's a babysitter.
And if you don't do that for your kid, they almost guilt you when they're old enough as you're not a good parent. All my other friends have this. Why can't I?
And that's such a tough battle.
And it's like, I don't, because, what do you do?
Yeah, there's stuff where parents do get too helicoptery and protective and just can't let their fucking kid be a kid. I'm with that. But that's going to be a weird battle when it's like there is something it's not like, oh, you can't see this movie or something like that. But it's like, oh, I don't want you addicted to a fucking, 4.5-inch screen for the rest of your life in the palm of your hand. So even if your friends have this, I don't want you to have this yet. Like, that is where it's going to get very weird.
Devil's advocate. I mean, I just told you I worshiped John Gotti as a kid. So
right.
It's like, I think you just kind of hope that you do enough for your kids and they learn enough.
You can grow out of that, though. Yes. That's not an addiction. This is an addiction.
That's the thing.
You know what I mean?
That's the thing. And
I'll take the John Gotti worship all day.
Yeah. Posters on the front bedroom door. Yeah.
I thought Vito Corleone was really cool. In some ways, I still do.
I mean, you watch Scarface, you think Tony Montana's cool. But that's what movies do. And But as my father always said, it's just a movie.
Yeah.
And it's not real.
Right. That's right.
This, as you said, the phone, it is real. And everything you do, and I've learned that the most. You've seen these videos. Some of these videos I'm not proud of. I wish some of these I could get off the internet. I mean, I've done a lot of things I'm not proud of. But as I know very well, the internet
lives
forever.
Yeah.
Because you could have something removed, but if someone's already screenshotted it.
It's there.
Yeah. So everything you do now, I mean, when you're out on, talking to somebody and something happens in the court, you don't know who's pulling a phone out.
That's right.
And they only take a certain part of it and send it to TMZ or to some news company. So it's
scary.
It's a wild world. And that's why your Mafia and group like that, that's why they'll never last, because you can't get in front of technology.
Right.
Back in the 30s, you could kill somebody and you'd be fine.
Yeah.
The mob, in groups like that, they can't do this. You go to this city right here, there's a camera every 20 feet.
Oh, it's
10
so
feet.
Yeah. Yeah, it's
so
advanced in that way. I guess some of that's good.
So what they
it's
do
also
is
scary.
Now the groups are on the internet, right?
Uh-huh.
Crypto and all that stuff. So
100%.
Yeah, it's an interesting world.
What happened with you leaving Barstool though? I didn't get to ask you about that because that's not like a lot of that wasn't discussed. You don't have to say anything you don't want.
No. So I worked at Barstool 2 different times. The initial time, that's actually wild. So I originally got hired in 2020, March of 2020. I remember I went up to New York. I think it was March 12th of 2020. I remember the day before I went there, the first coronavirus case was reported in New York City. And I thought, wow, this is interesting. Wonder what will come of this. And I remember getting on the train that day. There was no one on the train. It was insane. The Amtrak, there was no one on it.
Yeah.
And I remember going up and we did a radio show that day. And I remember Portnoy said to me, he asked me to come into, because I had planned to start. The NCAA tournament was about to begin.
Oh, that's your fucking Super Bowl.
And that was my first kind of foray into Barstool. And I remember as the week went on, they canceled the tournament.
Yes, I remember that.
And I thought, holy shit, this is real now. I remember Dave said to me, he goes, we're kind of stuck right now. He goes, just take the summer and let's see if football comes, and we'll bring you back. You could start then. And I remember I went home that night and I thought, wow, I have probably the worst luck in the world. I finally get a job at Barstool. I'd been in content for 10 years. This was going to take me to the next level, and I can't start because of this. And that's actually ultimately what led me to lose weight. I remember I said to myself, you know what? I have a few months here. Nothing's going on. I'm going to finally deal with this now. And September came that year, and I think I remember it was like no fans and stuff.
Oh yeah, in the stands.
Yeah. And I remember I got hired back, and I worked till the following February, and I had a beef with a coworker, this guy Rico, and it was
Bosco.
Yeah. It was really bad because it got really toxic for me, man. Like he
What was the beef over?
I couldn't tell you. He just doesn't like me.
Yeah.
And what he would do is he would go to like coworkers and be like, if you work with Nadu, we're done. I'm not working with you. And he kind of just fucking ruined it. Like it got really bad, like to the point of I had a podcast. He tried to like sabotage it. He actually was hiring people to like attack me on the internet through burner accounts.
Oh no.
My family. It was really bad.
Your family too.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And Portnoy actually found out about it. And it was bad for a while, and it just got really toxic. And I, as someone who, and I've never really talked much about this, but I've always been able to make money off the internet. I always know that if the going got tough and I left Barstool, I could go right back to what I was doing. And I thought, you know what, this isn't what I want. I'm just gonna leave. I don't want to deal with this. And I ended up resigning. And I was always connected to Barstool. I'd always was involved with shit, and occasionally I'd be involved with something that was going on. And I remember at the end of 2021, I got asked to do Rough and Rowdy, which is the boxing. Yeah.
Yeah, I rember all this content.
Yeah, one of the employees, he called me out, Jersey Jerry, and we fought December 10th, 2021. And
in West Virginia.
Yep.
No laws.
Yep. I wasn't an employee there at the time. We did really well. I all made a bunch of money, and I went back to doing what I was doing. I actually started the sit down in 2021 that year. And I remember 2022 came, and Barstool called me. It was June of that year, 2022, and they said, "Hey, we're doing this." It was a Barstool Idol. It was called. It was essentially I think 12 people vying for jobs at the company.
Yeah.
And we did like all sorts of different things. Like we made our own videos. We did content, like all sorts of different things. And they called me and said, we'd like for you to participate in it. Now, you're not going to win. But we know
they told you that out front.
Basically. You'll get a bunch of views. It'll be great for your profile. Like, and maybe you can impress Dave a little bit.
Yeah.
So I said, you know what? It was June. I'm like, fuck it. I'll do it. They said, you got to come to New York for, I think it was 4 days. And every night someone would get voted off. It was like Survivor, basically.
Yeah. But planned out ahead of time.
Yeah. At least for me. But we did all these competitions. And I remember that day Dave was like, you know, Nadu was great this week. Like maybe he'll come back. Maybe he wants to come back. And I ended up going back that few months later. And
so you always maintained a good relationship.
Yeah, I always maintained a good relationship. And then 2023 came, basketball ended, and my contract was coming up. I had thought it was coming up. It was a year contract. I had signed the contract in, I think, June of 22, so it was coming up in summer of 23. And Dave's guy, Gaz, came to me and said, hey, you know, what are you thinking for another year? Do you want to stay? We want to have you back. We're going to pay you $10,000 more. And I said, oh, cool. He's like, do you have a number, though, you're looking for? We're willing to work with you. And I had talked to people that worked there at the time, and I'd found out what they were making, or at least what they told me they were making. And I had looked at the sit down. I was making money on YouTube. I was making money on this podcast. I had all sorts of things I was doing. I was doing a lot of gambling content. And I thought 200 for me was the number I wanted. So I went to him. I said, 200. He said, all right, let me talk to Dave. Go to Dave. And Dave goes, 200. He goes, and basically,
said that just like he definitely said it.
Yeah, he basically was just like, we're not doing 200. He's like, we'll bring you back. And then I had found that, I guess in the contract, it was a year contract with an optional year for year 2 at their option.
Their option, yeah.
Which they picked up and said, we'll bring you back and we'll give you $10,000 more. He said, you could take that or walk. I walked. That day, they do the rundown, which is their daily thing they do. I'm the story.
Hashtag Nadu.
Yeah, it was a huge video. I remember the day after, New York Post puts me in it. You look that up, Jeff Nadu, New York Post. And I told you off the air. So my father.
Dave Portnoy calls Jeff Nadu selfish pig over Barstool Sports exit contract dispute.
Yep. So my dad.
I think he wanted 200 a year.
My dad calls me and he goes, "You see her on the New York Post?" I said, "No." He goes, "You should be proud of that headline." He said, "You wanted what you wanted and you left." And they made a big deal about it, and it was a problem for a while. And then things kind of go past it, and I think we're probably in a good place now.
Yeah, part of it's content.
Yeah,
I mean, come on.
It is.
He's having fun. He's getting in the New York Post.
And I know that. And I think in the end, I think I just got to a point, and I'm at that point now with Barstool where I think I'm just kind of past that point, in my life. I always realized, to me, doing what I like to do, owning it, and I think nowadays you can make a good amount of money owning stuff in media, right?
Yes.
And doing content and getting views and building your own things. Plus, I'm in control. And I've learned that about me. I can't work with people. I need to be in control of everything. And that's just how I prefer to do it. I have to do a lot more probably, but that's just how I like to do it. And I think in companies like that, you can only make one amount a lot of the time. I've learned in what I do, I have multiple sources of income, right? So, I told myself this year, Instagram was something that I wanted to conquer. I'd never really used it. And I said, this year I'm going to focus on trying to build Instagram, a following on Instagram, and build a following on TikTok and all this. So I was able to do it. And now I'm at a point where I make what I want to make. Do I want to do this my whole life? No. There's a day where all this will end for me. I won't be doing it.
Go away.
I'm not going to do it at all anymore. And I always look at it like this, and I'll end this with how I looked at my life always. In Casino, at the beginning of Casino, hear me out. De Niro's character is this sports bettor, very, good at it.
Ace Rusty.
Yeah, sure. And he goes through all this crazy shit, right? He's the he runs Tangiers. He's on TV. He's a part of the Chicago outfit, essentially. He's involved with this crazy guy. They try to whack him, blow his car up. You know, all this shit happens. And in the end, he's right back where he started, in his house, betting on sports. And I always envisioned, in a weird way, my life like that, where like I started gambling as a kid. And I remember so many nights, like in my early 20s, where I bet way more money than I had. And I remember sitting alone in my house, watching the games, sweating them out, and a lot of the time winning and thinking like, this is what I enjoy. I love college football. There's nothing better to me on a Saturday morning, betting my games and just enjoying that. That's my happy thing, you know? And I envisioned, like, I did all this stuff. I worked at Barstool. I fought on pay-per-view. I was on the New York Post. I've interviewed mobsters. I've went to a mental facility because they thought I was a mobster and I wasn't. Like, all this crazy shit that went on. Like, someday and social media, as we talked about, is just crazy. Mm-hmm. I just want to get to a point someday where it's not my life anymore. And I've honestly always wanted in the next year or two to like own a real business, like something I can touch, you know, whether it's food or something like that.
Didn't you say your dad ended up owning a business?
My dad was involved, still is. My family are very involved in business. My dad always taught all of us as kids to never work for anybody, go out and create a business. Yeah. And my brother and sister have their own businesses. And like I have as well, but I want a business that I can touch, you know, that like I don't need to get views to get paid,
right?
You know, like something that I can be proud of and I can go to every day. And, you know, honestly, in my later life, like I want to help kids. Like that's always been my goal. Like I always want to just make a bunch of money and just help kids. And I'll leave this story, and it's actually pretty local to where we are. You're familiar with Bobby Hurley?
Of course.
Okay, so he's one of my heroes. And the reason for that is
Coach Hurley.
Yeah, I don't know how much you know about him as a guy, but he basically was a probation officer for years in Jersey City, and he became a basketball coach at St. Anthony, and he never took a salary. And the little salary that they gave him, he gave to the school.
Yeah.
And he won 4 national titles and dozens of state titles.
They were a powerhouse.
Yeah, and he took so many kids to the NBA, and he did it all just because he loved basketball, and he never went and got a job anywhere else. And he just helped kids become men and become productive members of society. And I look at like all the shit I've done, like the stupid stuff I've said online. Like I almost want to like do something good for once, you know? And like I think young men there's just not a lot of leaders. And I want to, the town I live in, we have a public school, and I've always wanted to just be a coach and just maybe have a business and just disappear from all this media stuff. And just, I don't want to look into mobsters my whole life. So I think that's the end game eventually. But for right now, it's fun, and you never know where I'll go next with it. So
that's really cool.
I'm here
man.
talking to someone like you. So
yeah, man. Look, you're great at content. I love watching it, and I hope people who haven't heard of you before check out your shit. But like, it's cool to see that you have like a kind of full circle give back thing about it. Like you want to get your own shit and have your own life and do things your own way, which that's exactly what most of us want too. But then you also want to do something cool, and to look up to someone like Coach Hurley, who obviously, you know, his kids are now famous as well. And have done some amazing things. Like that's pretty awesome.
Yeah. So it's you know, but for right now, it's what I'm doing is fun, and you know, people are learning a lot. It's cool. Like I'm sure you have it happen to you. Maybe you don't, but I would think you're huge. So I would think people come up to you. People come up to you. Do people come up to you and say they know who you are?
Very rarely.
So with me, I guess
I'm under the radar.
Yeah, with Barstool, I guess they do.
Yeah.
Like in my town where I live, I can't go to certain bars because I'll just be taking pictures all night with people. Yeah. So like, but I think it's cool. Like when someone comes up to me and they're like, hey, I saw that episode you did on, you know, so-and-so, like, or I saw you on TikTok. Like that's the coolest thing that will ever happen. Like no matter what, I can make all the money, but like someone come up to me and be like, hey, I really like that content, or that was really cool that you shared that. That's super cool. So I don't know if I could ever let go of that. That's the cool part of all this, but
Well, you're scratching your itch too. You're making content about stuff you love too.
Helps, whether it's
the
NFL draft or
Yep.
The mob or something. And if you follow me, I can't say you won't be offended maybe at some point, but
no, I mean this. You're a great follow.
Thanks.
It is funny as shit. You comment on all kinds of random shit as well, and I'm here for it, especially like on the new Twitter. Like, it's
I
good
just
stuff,
say what you probably want to say but won't.
but won't say out loud. That's right.
And I'll take the shit
That's a
comes
good
from
way to put it.
So-
All right, Chef Nadu, this has been fucking fun, man.
Yeah.
Thanks for doing it. I'm glad we can make it happen.
I appreciate you guys having me. Thank you.
Of course. All right, everybody else, you know what it is. Give it a thought. Get back to me. Peace. Thank you guys for watching the episode. If you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button and smash that like button on the video. They're both a huge, huge help. And if you would like to follow me on Instagram and X, those links are in my description below.